The Eastern Allied Kingdom, a vibrant land with bustling cities and green fields, seemed peaceful from above. However, this very place was destined for terrible destruction 10 years into the future. Powerful figures, shrouded in dark magic and holding ancient books and weapons, would bring chaos. Heroes wielding bright magical light would try to fight back against the encroaching darkness, but the forces of destruction would be overwhelming, engulfing everything in a blinding, dangerous glow. A massive explosion of energy would tear through the land. The bright light would spread, bringing widespread devastation. Everything would be destroyed terribly by a group known as the Five Great Sins. The beautiful kingdom would be reduced to nothing but desolate, broken earth. To stop this terrible future, someone decided to act, preventing the coming destruction. This person, a young man, gathered papers, planning how to change the dark future. He chose to become a sponsor for the very individuals who would become the Five Great Sins. He felt a mix of surprise and worry, realizing the huge impact his actions would have. The young man sat, pondering the heavy responsibility he had taken on. The story begins with a man who was once a corporate slave, working long, hard hours in his old world. He found himself now in the body of a noble, sitting comfortably in a grand mansion. At first, he thought this new life in a fantasy world was great, but then he struggled to read a book, wondering why he couldn't automatically understand the language. A servant pointed out he was holding the book upside down, making him realize he was completely illiterate and had no special abilities at all in this new body. Soon after, a servant announced that it was time for dinner, and a lavish spread was prepared. The young man looked at the delicious food, impressed by the rich life he now led. After a satisfying meal, he was helped with his bath by the maids, a truly pampered existence. He lived as a useless young master of a count's family, spending his days eating and playing. He thought this luxurious life was wonderful, even though he had no idea where he actually was. A maid informed him that his brothers were returning the next day and advised him to go to bed early, which made him think about them. The maids mentioned his brothers, young Master Leo and young Master Tonio, and seemed surprised he didn't know much about the Palladio family. The name Palladio family struck him as unsettlingly familiar, causing a flicker of recognition in his mind. He suddenly plunged himself into the bathwater in a panic, startling the maids. Rising from the water, he gasped in horror, realizing he was in the world of a game called Psychedelia. He recognized the game, Psychedelia, which was about heroes fighting against dark forces. He remembered playing this turn-based RPG during his past life, squeezing in gaming time after his demanding work hours. He knew that no matter how the game started, the moment the Five Great Sins appeared, destruction would begin. These sins included characters representing greed, sloth, and pride, among others. The sins, including misophobia, would relentlessly destroy the kingdom, nobles, and cities. He remembered the Pallatio Count family, which appeared in a side quest before the main story, noting that the eldest son Leo was known as the prostitution king, and the second son, Tonio, was a drug lord. He knelt on the floor, remembering the awful details of his current family. He recalled the subquest to investigate the Pallatio Count family, a family of degenerate nobles, who ran an organization called Avalon, and remembered the ominous feeling of approaching their mansion in the game. He was shocked that, of all places, he had become a part of the Pallatio family, the first noble house in the kingdom to be destroyed by the Five Great Sins. He, Alon Palatio, was the extra villain, the third son of this doomed family. In his despair, he wished he could return to his old life as a corporate slave, crying at the thought of dying in 10 years, despite his current comfortable life. He felt this situation was even worse than having 6 months of wages unpaid in his past life. He wondered why he, a possessed person, had no special perks, unlike others, but then a new thought sparked in his mind about what his perk could be. He suddenly realized that knowing the game story 10 years in advance was like knowing the future, which was his special perk. This realization led him to wonder if he could prevent the coming destruction by eliminating its causes beforehand. He resolved to use his knowledge to reform the Five Great Sins, hoping to secure a peaceful, noble life for himself. He questioned if it was possible, considering they were still children, and reflected on his own lack of abilities. 2 months later, his plan was already in motion. He had rescued orphans from what was supposedly an Eastern orphanage, but was actually a human experimentation facility. He then entrusted the care and management of the orphanage to a capable girl named Yuchia, while Evan, his personal knight, stood by. Evan complimented Alon, saying his judgment was accurate and that Alon was truly capable. Evan noticed that Alon didn't show his emotions much, even when complimented. Alon told Evan he was counting on him, attempting to smile, though it looked strained. Alon realized that his face didn't show emotions clearly anymore, which he found hard to get used to. He looked at his reflection, trying to make an expressive face, realizing only his facial muscles seemed to have not transferred properly during his possession. Evan politely thanked Alon for the compliment, despite Alon's emotionless expression. Evan was a rare supporting character in the game Psychedelia who kept his word, a quality Alon valued, explaining why he hired him quickly. Evan then asked about the raid to rescue Utia. Evan confirmed that he understood why Alon had specifically chosen Utia. He admitted that even with his years of experience as a mercenary, Utia was truly extraordinary. Evan had found Utia among other prisoners, chained in a dark, desolate place. He was amazed by her immense power and couldn't understand why she had remained captive so easily. Evan asked Alon why he hadn't brought Utia to his side, thinking it would be beneficial to have such a powerful person. Alon acknowledged Evan's sharp observation, explaining that leaving Utia where she was might seem like wasting her power. But he revealed that leaving her there was a crucial part of his grand plan for Utia Bloodia. He knew that Utia was a member of the Blood Clan, destined to make a contract with an indescribable otherworldly being and become the Sin of Wrath. As the Sin of Wrath, she would become a monster, causing hundreds of thousands of deaths and destruction. Alon believed that if Utia grew up in peace, she wouldn't become the destructive Sin of Wrath. He felt a sense of achievement, having removed the first landmine from his path, then thought of an excuse for leaving Utia behind. He told Evan that the time hasn't come yet for Utia to join them. Evan was confused by Alon's vague answer. He repeated Alon's words, "The time hasn't come?" Still puzzled, Alon instructed Evan to keep this matter secret, provide generous support to Utia and the orphanage, and also give a letter to Utia. Evan asked if the letter was important, and Alon replied that it was just a greeting letter. Alon explained that Utia had been through terrible human experimentation, so he thought a letter might help calm her. Evan promised to deliver the letter well, though he was surprised Alon would write such a thing. Alon wasn't sure if the letter would truly calm her, but he felt it was worth a try. He stood by the window as Evan rode off, knowing the true meaning hidden in his greeting. The letter contained a special incantation he had heard many times during his game playthroughs. This incantation, Sin of Wrath, be calm, the anguish of darkness, the emptiness of light. It was a specific phrase from the Sin of Wrath storyline. In the game, this phrase was usually spoken during a chaotic scene with a blood-red moon and magical energy. It often came after a lot of struggle and pain. However, in the game, the phrase was often too late to stop her transformation into a raging, monstrous figure. It would be used after Utia had already lost control, leading to a fierce magical battle. But Alon hoped that by using it 10 years earlier, it might not be too late to change Utia's fate. He stretched contentedly, having removed one of the major destruction flags, and wondered what his next step should be. He found it amusing that a simple phrase could befriend a monster, but since Utia's race worshipped otherworldly beings, he thought it might just work. He reminded himself that the minds of those deeply devoted to such beliefs were often unpredictable. Their reactions and motivations could be impossible to guess. Meanwhile, Utia received and read the letter, her expression unreadable. Evan sensed her absurdly powerful magic, noting how strange it was for such a potent child to appear so emotionless. He watched her intently as she processed the letter's content. Utia looked up, her eyes narrowing, asking if the person who sent the letter was named Alon. A wave of intense dark power erupted around her, as she wondered why Alon didn't call her to his side. Evan was utterly shocked by the surge of power coming from her. He realized that Utia could visualize magic, an ability only master-level users possessed, and remembered Alon's words, "The time hasn't come yet." He looked down, Alon's words now making more sense. Evan reflected on Alon's statement, "The time hasn't come yet," and murmured that he understood. Utia clutched the letter to her chest, the words, "The anguish of darkness, the emptiness of light." This promise, known only to a master, gave Evan a rough understanding of Alon's true intentions. He looked thoughtful, the air around him shimmering with magic. He now understood Alon's will and what it meant for Utia. Utia, the one destined to become the Sin of Wrath and the Bloody Queen, now held the key to a different future. She was Utia, the daughter of the Blood Clan and future Sin of Wrath, a powerful and dangerous figure. Back at the mansion, Alon was fast asleep, content with his day's work of securing his comfortable future. He felt cheered on by the bright moon, looking forward to tackling his next challenge. He slept peacefully, dreaming of a future where he could enjoy his noble life. A helpful tip for possessed individuals explains that in the Asteria Kingdom, blue evening primroses are traditionally placed on the fatal wounds or scars during funerals. Books fall around Alon as he lets out a shout, showing his frustration. He searches through papers and books, feeling annoyed that he still hasn't found anything important. Finding clues for the third boss is pretty tricky too. Alon continues his search in the study when his aide Evan approaches him. Evan shares that he has rescued the second child Alon asked about. Alon asks eagerly if Evan treated the child very kindly and gently. Evan assures him that he did, after rescuing them from the illegal slave market. Suddenly, someone bursts into the room with a bright flash of light, startling Alon and Evan. It's Palatio Tonio, the Count family's second son, who smiles widely with a mean look. Tonio notices Alon with a book, mocking him for being illiterate but suddenly studying. He then forcefully grabs Alon's shoulder, telling him to answer his brother. Tonio presses Alon down, making Alon think about how much of a jerk his brother always is, and how the original Alon put up with it. Alon wants to fight back, but he knows he can't. He thinks, "I'd love to fight back," but Alon calmly states that he will leave the study since Tonio needs to use it. Tonio laughs, pleased that Alon knows his place. He then steps on Alon's back, pushing him further to the floor without mercy. Just then, a knife is thrown and sticks into the wall. Another figure enters the room, startling Tonio, who exclaims, "What?" The newcomer calls out the vermin for being noisy. The newcomer, the eldest son, tells both of them to get lost, as he doesn't want to see blood so early. This new person is Palacio Leo, the Count family's eldest son. Leo tells Tonio to wash off his vulgar smell when he comes to the study, and to leave quickly while he is being nice. Tonio glares back at Leo as Alon slowly crawls out of the room, observing the family's twisted dynamics. The Palacio Count family, though minor in the game, held unexpected power. A subquest prompt appears, asking Alon to investigate the Palacio Count family of the Asteria Kingdom. The description states the Count's family sells prostitution and drugs and runs an organization called Avalon. Alon realizes their power is far greater than he expected. Therefore, the degenerate brothers are fiercely fighting over the family head position. Tonio is shown as the underworld boss, the prostitution king. Leo is depicted as the drug lord, who runs organizations and a massive drug cartel. Alon knows he must absolutely not be touched if he wants a comfortable life. He quietly leaves the study as Alon leaves, exiting the room. Evan looks shocked as Alon leaves the room in an explosion of movement. Alon feels exhausted from the encounter and rubs his head, tired of his family's behavior, while Evan stands over him. He reminds himself that his goal is to live happily as a weak and incompetent illegitimate son. Alon lets out a heavy sigh, tired from the events, and collapses onto a sofa. Evan observes Alon and remarks, wondering about the second child Alon rescued. Alon looks back at Evan, deep in thought, as Evan wonders how someone like Alon discovers secret foreign human and illegal slave markets to rescue children. Evan thinks to himself that Alon looks like he can barely take care of himself, while Alon whispers, I'm so drained. Alon sighs, feeling drained, while Evan thinks Alon looks like he can barely take care of himself. Alon simply murmurs in response. Evan asks, "You said that child wasn't ordinary, right?" Alon confirms that the child is indeed not ordinary. Alon explains that the child is world destruction level, belonging to the Allied Kingdom made up of several nations. He remembers the harsh reality of the illegal slave market of Callian Kingdom, the most central one. The child, Deus Macallian, is the second boss of Psychedelia, who was sold as a slave. Deus was severely abused while being passed around to various places. Eventually, he becomes the sin of sloth among the 5 great sins. He is shown gaining immense power, glowing brightly with purple energy. Deus uses his terrifying power, manifesting a powerful hand. He eliminates kingdoms in the most horrific ways. Dark energy and blood surround him as he causes widespread destruction. Bright white lines flash across the scene of devastation. People lie defeated around him, emphasizing the cruelty of his rampage. The scene darkens with red and purple hues. Alon recalls that this part of the game terrified most players due to its brutality. Unlike the title Sin of Sloth, he's a diligent guy who repays what was done to him several times over, so Alon repeatedly told Evan to treat him well. Alon shivers, remembering the horrifying game description, and explains that he sent Deus to the orphanage because the right time for him to join Alon hasn't come yet. Evan says he understands. He then asks if the letter Alon sent to Miss Utia was about this second child. Alon responds, well, yes. Alon confirms it was. He included everyday details in the letter to build a friendly connection. A boy stands under a bright sky, looking hurt and alone, as if guided by the others. He stands barefoot, his body covered in marks, showing how much he has suffered. A voice tells him that he has been broken. The boy looks down, his spirit seemingly crushed by his past experiences. The voice asks if the marks on his body are from the black goat. The boy looks up, his eyes showing a mix of pain and surprise. A mysterious woman with long white hair appears, telling him that the Great Moon has chosen him and congratulates him. She moves elegantly, telling him to feel the power he's been given and to draw out what's truly his. She extends her hand, offering him power, and the boy stares at her, surrounded by bright, swirling energy. The woman smiles, her red eyes shining as she reaches out to him under the full moon. Dark energy swirls around the boy as the woman's words echo, promising him revenge. Bright blue and purple light fills the sky, showing a surge of power. The mysterious woman flies through the sky, holding a letter, preparing to send it. She mentions sending her first reply. She recalls Utia's letter, which talked about her second brother using her as a chair, and asks for continued letter exchanges. The scene shifts to bright, streaking lights, signifying a time jump or change of focus. More bright lights and sparkles fill the scene. The woman sends her first reply with a light greeting. She holds a letter against the backdrop of a large moon, thinking she should send her first reply now. Back in his mansion, Alon is still frustrated, wondering, where on earth is the third boss? He cries out in alarm, exclaiming that something terrible has happened. Evan looks shocked and reports, "Master, Tonio has died." Alon looks surprised, holding a book, asking. A dark, foreboding energy fills the air. Tonio is shown lying dead on the ground, and Alon asks, "Already?" From above, many people are seen at Tonio's funeral, a somber event. The Count, Tonio's father, is surrounded by women, looking distraught. Alon, however, looks bored and hungry during the funeral, wondering when it will end. He reflects that the family situation, with Tonio dying so early from an accidental fall, is truly chaotic even for a dark fantasy story. He notes the death setting is a bit different. Alon realizes that Tonio's death happened differently than in the game, where Leo desperately wailed about struggling for years and finally killing Tonio to become the definitive heir. But now, Alon sees Leo's face. Realizing Leo looks like he just got lucky, he deduces that Leo or his supporters are obviously behind Tonio's death. Judging by Leo's barely contained smirk, the scene fades to dark, abstract shapes. Alon stands over Tonio's coffin, observing the scene with his arms folded. 1 year later, Alon continues his efforts. With the succession issue settled and Leo now fully controlling the drug business, the Count's family home has become even more peaceful. Alon sits with Evan in a peaceful room, both reading letters. Alon has become pen pals with Utia, believing that building familiarity consistently will help his goals. He reads Utia's letter, noting that Hidan is good at war games, Yuna is good at hide-and-seek, and Deus often does puppet theater, and they are all growing well, which Alon thinks are good kids. He notices that the sponsorship list below is for this month, and it has grown. Alon remarks, "It's strange that such a small orphanage keeps getting more sponsors." Evan points to a document and says, "Really? That's fortunate," explaining that an information guild contacted them claiming to have found a clue about the thing Alon has been searching for. Alon looks thoughtful, adjusting his glasses, and notes that if it's a clue, it must be an ancient text about the third boss. Finally finding that guy too, Alon and Evan relax in the peaceful mansion, with sunlight streaming through the large windows. Suddenly, screams fill the air, and blood splashes violently, marking a chaotic scene. The chaos erupts at a drug distribution site named Margot. Two men from the Palacio organization comment on the eldest son's generosity, saying their organization will grow even more in the future. The scene shifts to a view of a building being destroyed from below. Suddenly, one of the men screams in terror as people around him fall. He cries out, "No, my hands are moving on their own." He screams for help as he is forced to stab himself with a sword. Another man attacks him. Another man plunges a sword into his own body, screaming in pain. Others are also seen being controlled, attacking each other against their will. One man screams in pain as he is attacked by his own comrade. Another man plunges a sword into his own body, crying out, "Save, Ga!" as he falls. A figure silently watches as a controlled man falls to his death. The mysterious figure, revealed to be Deus, remarks that today's puppet theater was also entertaining to watch, and that the sponsorship list to report has grown. Deus stands, controlling the people with glowing purple strings, acting like a puppeteer, holding the strings in his hand. The mysterious white-haired woman stands beside Deus, looking at him calmly. She provocatively asks, "Why do you sympathize looking out over the devastated city under a bright moon?" Deus calmly states, "No, they're scum who grind up humans to make drugs," and expresses doubt that this activity helps with his revenge. The woman assures him that it does, saying this is the foundation for creating a place for that person to return, as energy swirls around them. She adds that when that person arrives, the place can't be shabby, can it? Deus simply replies that he understands, while both characters look intensely forward. Deus simply replies, "Understood." With a flash of pink and purple energy, the destruction continues. Waves of pink energy sweep across the scene. Deus and the woman stand together under the blue moon, as everything is according to that person's will. The ground bursts with bright pink and purple energy as the city seems to warp. The drug distribution site is consumed by bright, destructive energy. The woman explains that their blue moon is that person's sword. A powerful blue light descends from the sky. The intense blue light completely devastates the entire area. A massive circular symbol, resembling a blue moon, is carved into the destroyed land. The drug distribution site is utterly destroyed, leaving only ruins bathed in dark blue light. It has been 2 years since the protagonist began exchanging letters with Utia. The scene shows a grand mansion under a bright, clear sky. Someone, clearly in a rush, gasps for air and frantically calls out for another person inside a large hall. Evan finally returns, looking a bit tired, and tells the protagonist that he was in the back garden. Evan then reports that he has safely sent the 5th orphan to the orphanage. During this time, the protagonist reflects on how he successfully rescued all 3 remaining sins. The protagonist offers Evan a plate of food, telling him to eat plenty, and Evan gratefully accepts. The protagonist thinks about how hard it was to find the 3rd sin, greed, but his game knowledge and Evan's hard work made it possible. Evan eagerly takes more macarons from the plate, showing his hunger. The protagonist tells Evan he can finally rest after all his travels, and Evan confirms that the orphanage mission is now complete. The protagonist feels a wave of relief now that their important mission is finally over. Evan asks if the protagonist is happy, noting that he doesn't seem to show it much, but the protagonist insists he is. The protagonist claims he is smiling, even though his expression doesn't quite match his words. Evan simply nods, letting the comment pass, and agrees with the protagonist. This marks the beginning of the 3rd chapter, as the protagonist clenches his fist in determination. The protagonist relaxes onto the grass, thinking how much smoother everything has gone than he expected. He remembers the initial bosses of psychedelia, who were destined to become the 5 great sins. These individuals became the great sins because of terrible past events that deeply affected them. Even though he went back in time to save them before they fully awakened as sins, He thought it would be very hard to rescue them perfectly. He was worried that he might still find them in completely broken states despite his efforts. Now he asks Evan for an update on the orphanage, and Evan hands him a letter. Evan reports that the orphanage is doing well, and the children, who were once sad and broken, are now quite cheerful. The images show the children smiling and playing, a stark contrast to their previous sadness. The protagonist is surprised by the good news and realizes they might not need to hire a childcare teacher after all. He wonders if Utia's amazing care for the orphans is linked to her own past, feeling like he might have interfered with her story. The protagonist concludes that Utia is a truly good child and asks if there's any special news in the letter. Evan reads from the letter stating that all the children are healthy and some are growing exceptionally well. The letter also reassures them that they don't need to worry about Deus or any of the newly sent children. The protagonist feels a sense of satisfaction, knowing that all the orphanage children are growing up well. He marvels at how normally all 5 future great sins are developing, recognizing the immense importance of a good environment for growth. Evan then asks the protagonist when he actually plans to visit the children, since he always mentions there's a right time. The protagonist admits that actually he has no intention of meeting them in person. He explains that while being close to them would be good, the process of them becoming sins is just too horrific and tragic. He recalls the terrible personalities they had, even as children, in the game's flashbacks, which still makes him scared. He then suggests with a sigh that maybe 5 years from now would be the right time to meet them. Evan simply says he understands. The protagonist then shifts his focus, realizing he needs to develop his own survival skills. He needs these abilities to protect himself in this harsh and dangerous dark fantasy world. Luckily, his current body has magical talent, which is a crucial advantage for him. Evan then asks the protagonist if he has heard of an organization called the Blue Moon. The protagonist is puzzled, stating he has never heard of such a group. Evan explains that the Blue Moon is a well-known organization that hunts down criminal groups, doing good work like trash cleanup. The protagonist thinks it's not a group he knows from his game world, so it will probably disappear soon. Evan then adds a surprising detail, mentioning that these Blue Moon individuals also kill nobles, which seems to shock the protagonist. Evan thought the protagonist would surely know about them, then speaks his name directly. The protagonist then tells Evan that, starting today, he will sleep in the room right next to his. The night sky darkens over the large house, setting a mysterious mood. Evan then prepares to listen to the Blue Moon's weekly activity report. A figure with long white hair, a member of the Blue Moon, asks about the report from the north. Seo Long, a girl with cat-like ears, excitedly reports that she completely got rid of all the slave traders, taking their heads. She winks playfully, proud that no one managed to figure out her real identity during the mission. The text identifies her as Seo Lang, the sin of pride, highlighting her powerful and confident nature. Seo Lang recalls how she even offered to spare them if they guessed her eye color, but none of them knew. Ryan, a girl with long green hair, praises the clothes she made, then casually mentions melting all the corpses. Ryan sits calmly with a book, showing her composed demeanor despite her earlier gruesome report. The text identifies her as Ryan, the sin of greed, as she reports that the South mission is also now complete. Radan, a boy with long white hair, is seen sitting on steps, having handled the illegal human experimentation facility. He reports that he minced the annoying Avalon guys who were causing trouble into unrecognizable pieces. Radan looks up with a chilling smile, indicating his satisfaction with his brutal work. The text identifies him as Radan, the sin of misophobia, as another figure with glowing red eyes declares that everything is going according to that person's will. The group stands together, declaring their loyalty, stating they exist for the Great Moon. Utia stands amongst them, raising her hands as if in worship towards the moonlit sky. The text identifies them as the secret organization Blue Moon, who worship the Great Moon, but then notes there is one problem. Utia reveals the problem. The head of Avalon, who is also the eldest son of the Count family, is actually targeting that person. She explains that she found a dangerous directive while she was cleaning up the South. The directive clearly shows that the Count family's eldest son is planning to target that person. The others look shocked and alarmed at this serious revelation. Utia confirms the threat, holding up the incriminating paper for everyone to see. The paper details a plan to quietly poison the Count after his death and dispose of him, which infuriates Utia. Utia's eyes glow with anger, confirming the truth of the dangerous directive. A black screen marks the passage of time. 2 years later, people gather in a grand hall for a funeral. The protagonist's father, Count Palladio, has passed away. While officially stated as a heart attack, it was widely known he abused drugs until his death, making the cause of death obvious. Someone wonders if the Blue Moon was involved again in this death. Another person confirms that the Blue Moon raided last night, leading to another complete annihilation. It seems the other side is now even more concerned about the growing influence of the Blue Moon. The funeral for the Count ends quietly, with no one truly mourning his passing. The scene shows the silent attendees leaving the grand funeral hall. Evan asks the protagonist what he plans to do next, knowing that the eldest son will soon become the family head. Evan looks at the protagonist, waiting for his decision on their next course of action. The protagonist sees luggage and declares they are leaving, causing Evan to look surprised. He instructs Evan to pack his belongings as well, stating simply, "Let's leave." Evan is completely shocked, asking if the protagonist is planning to leave the territory entirely. The protagonist clarifies that he's not completely leaving, but heading down south to a place Evan knows as Road Mill. He confirms his plan, stating he intends to leave for Roadmill, a small village. Roadmill is identified as a small village located in the southern part of Palacio's territory. A fancy carriage waits outside, ready to take them away from the estate. A man watches from a balcony as the protagonist and Evan prepare to depart. The scene shifts to a kitchen, showing eggs sizzling on toast. The protagonist is carefully preparing the breakfast, showing a different side of himself. He expertly flips a piece of toast, focused on his cooking. He serves the food and drinks, creating a calm, domestic scene. Then, surprisingly, in just 3 days, the protagonist returns to the Count's house. This time, the event is the funeral of the eldest son, who was supposed to become the family head. The protagonist is visibly annoyed, expressing his dismay at having to return to this brutal place once more. He notices that the cause of death is different this time and wonders why the eldest son died so quickly. The eldest son died from a sword piercing his heart, and the protagonist wonders who could have killed Leo. An attendant approaches the protagonist nervously, trying to ask about the cause of death. The attendant is startled and quickly apologizes for making eye contact with the intimidating protagonist. People around them start whispering, confused by the attendant's strange reaction. The protagonist hears the murmurs and wonders why the attendant behaves so strangely. Evan rushes over to the protagonist, urgently asking if he found out about him. Evan then asks a shocking question. If the protagonist was by any chance the mastermind behind the overnight elimination of Avalon, Evan stares intently at the protagonist, awaiting his answer to the unexpected accusation. The protagonist simply remains silent, offering no response to Evan's question. A while ago, on the day Alon left for Roadmill, his carriage rolled away from the mansion. Someone asked young Master Alon why he was going to a small place like Roadmill instead of a big city, if he was leaving anyway. Alon strongly disagreed, saying Roadmill was the destination of his plan. He felt proud, believing he had saved the 5 great sins from misfortune. He looked down at the cracked surface, showing people gathered below him. Alon thought he had even prevented the future of world destruction. He dreamed of living like a noble, enjoying life forever with friends having a picnic. Alon believed Roadmill was perfect because it had no connection to the original story. Plus, there was a Palacio family villa there, a separate big house for relaxing, like a noble living forever. Alon dreamed of living like a noble, enjoying life forever, saying it was perfect for living while sucking up the good life. He told his companion that everything had a reason, but his companion seemed to doubt his seriousness. His companion said he didn't believe Alon anymore, thinking Alon just brushed off difficult things, replying with a sarcastic, "So perceptive." Back at the mansion, someone watched Alon's carriage move far into the distance from a balcony. Leo, the man watching, wondered if he should kill Alon or not. He thought Alon was a useless guy anyway. After the father's death, he was planning to poison and dispose of him. But since he was quietly going to the remote territory, Leo saw no reason to kill him anymore. Leo paused, still thinking about it. Maybe it was because Avalon matters weren't going well lately. He felt that somehow Alon just bothered him. Leo called out to Alman and ordered him to follow the carriage from behind. Alman, looking surprised, asked if that meant to kill him. Leo was shocked by Alman's question. Leo looked angrily at Alman, who stood ready. He tried to tell Alman that his job was just to follow any order without question. Why was he suddenly asking questions? Suddenly, Alman stabbed Leo, who was staring back at him. Leo, badly hurt, screamed at Alman for betraying him. Alman cried out, "Ka," and "Kak, you," as he was wounded. Leo screamed at Alman for betraying him. Alman said he enjoyed war games, and it had been quite fun until now, identifying himself as Alman, Leo's henchman. Chapter 4 began with Alman explaining the group's belief, taught by the red moon. He said the blue moon is that person's sword, so they move as that person wields them. But Alman warned that if anyone tries to harm the great moon, they can move on their own. Then, with a swift move, Alman severely wounded Leo, who screamed in agony. Alman revealed that we can move on our own, as Leo let out a groan. Leo, bleeding and struggling, cried out, realizing Alman was waiting for him to say those words, and he hadn't expected it would take 2 whole years for this moment. Alman told the dying Leo that with his last words, the powerful organization Avalon would disappear from the continent forever. Alman thought it was unfortunate for Leo. He explained that the great moon had given Leo a chance before disappearing into the moonlight. Meanwhile, a bright morning dawned. Alon woke up, stretching and wishing everyone a good morning. He truly felt that Roadmill was heaven, and that his new peaceful home was peaceful too. Each day was peaceful. He woke up when he wanted to wake up. Alon was completely enjoying the life of a noble. As he ate, Alon thought about starting a toast business. The toast fell off the fork, and then a servant arrived with a telegram. Alon was curious, wondering what the message could be. The telegram landed on his food, stating that due to the death of Leo Palazzo, Alon Palazzo's return is requested. And so, the Heaven Trial version ended in just 3 days. Alon looked shocked. And so, Alon returned to the Palazzo family where Leo lay in a coffin. Alon noticed everyone was reacting strangely around him. Alon, looking distressed, begged them to explain why he became the mastermind in a way he could understand. He felt like he had fallen into a crazy situation with continuous strange occurrences. His companion calmly explained that since Leo was killed after Alon left the mansion, there was nothing troublesome left from Leo's death. Alon now had a perfect alibi to become the heir, and with Avalon also gone, he questioned if this was actually fun. He felt overwhelmed. not knowing where to even begin arguing against all this information. Alon's companion then explained that Alon was the only one who gained from this. The companion then mentioned that Alon was in charge of a sword master level assassin. However, his companion shook his head, saying the Information Guild believed it was probably not the Blue Moon. But Avalon was killed by swords, and they said it was a hellish scene. That's why Alon was seen as the mastermind, with a sword master under his command. Alon reasoned that the Blue Moon didn't even appear in the game, so weak groups that disappear before the story starts couldn't be the culprits. Alon then asked who on earth it could be if not the Blue Moon, and if there were any traces left. One of the girls replied that they left none. Another girl, with cat-like features, smiled mysteriously, adding that there were just tons of corpses left behind. Suddenly, another group arrived, surrounded by purple light. A boy, the Blue Moon member, stated that Avalon's remaining forces, 486 people, were all there. He then reported to his boss. The member with white hair smiled fiercely in the presence of the boss, saying he cut them all in half and killed them, just as the boss ordered. A calm voice simply said, "Good." A girl with long silver hair and glowing red eyes smiled sinisterly, proclaiming it perfect. She continued, saying that the massive organization Avalon that controlled the Asteria Kingdom, it had been reduced to dust in just 5 days. The white-haired member confirmed to the silver-haired girl that Avalon was completely finished. He then asked what to do next, as he had found more nobles connected to Avalon. The silver-haired boss looked at the white-haired member, saying she already knew what she was going to tell him. Her red eyes glowed intensely. She looked at her subordinates, ready to give the next command, noting the Altia Duke family seems especially deeply involved. A dark, ominous figure stood in a snowy landscape, hinting at the next targets. Alon's companion was quiet. The white-haired member, with a chilling smile, declared that he would dispose of them quietly. His red eyes glowed intensely. She looked at her subordinates, ready to give the next command. The white-haired member declared that he would dispose of them quietly. He stood firm, surrounded by a powerful aura, ready to carry out his dark tasks. He stood firm, surrounded by a powerful aura, ready to carry out his dark tasks. Meanwhile, Alon remained in Roadmill, a warm village with a mild climate all year round, unaware of the true extent of the chaos he had supposedly caused. The woman with bright pink hair and red eyes looked deeply troubled, as if everyone already knew a dark secret she was about to share. The feeling of unease continued as images of powerful magical figures flashed through her mind. Under a vast dark sky, then a calm voice instructed to handle it quietly, showing a serene woman and a man with glowing blue energy, ready for action. This strong white-haired man stood firm, radiating power, clearly prepared to carry out the quiet command. Meanwhile, the pink-haired woman from before sighed softly, appearing burdened by the heavy responsibilities she carried. She spoke with a green-haired woman, confirming the Information Guild was making sure no one connected the recent trouble to their group, the Blue Moon. The green-haired woman and a small fox-eared helper handed over documents, reporting that other guilds were blaming the chaos on a single, powerful swordmaster. The pink-haired woman asked if they should keep watching, and the purple-haired man agreed, deciding to maintain surveillance. With a slightly sinister smile, she gave a firm order. This secret must absolutely never reach that person. She explained to the group that the incident wasn't planned by them, but happened because that person's blood relative had attacked first. She reminded them all that they were merely swords, and must always act only when given direct orders. The purple-haired man looked on as the documents floated around him. He spoke, asking if they should maintain surveillance, showing the group's reaction. The woman continued to assert her authority, stating the incident wasn't in order and reminding them they were swords. Her gaze was sharp and intense, emphasizing her point as the white-haired man seemed to recoil under her intensity. She continued, saying that a sword shouldn't think on its own, right? She repeated that the Blue Moon must only move on orders. She warned them to remember this, emphasizing that that person knows everything and sees all their actions. Finally, she urged them to never disappoint them as the group stood listening, including the white-haired man. The man was shown deep in thought, confessing that he didn't understand. The pink-haired woman, Utia, seemed anxious, questioning why someone with overwhelming abilities like herself would feel anxiety over merely being caught. The man remained confused, still pondering Utia's words. Another person spoke up, confirming they understood completely, stating that all their efforts were for the Great Moon and that person. The scene then peacefully shifted to a large, elegant house bathed in the soft glow of moonlight and distant stars. This marked the beginning of Chapter 5 of Became the Patron of Villains. Inside the house, a young man sat overwhelmed, mentally saying, no more to the endless work. He was completely exhausted, slumped over a desk piled high with papers, explaining that he had been busy without a moment to breathe since the funeral. He longed for relaxation and play, which he felt was a noble's right, also noting that his brother Leo's death had happened much earlier than it was supposed to in the original story. Several vassals approached him with even more stacks of documents, respectfully addressing him as the young count, making him sigh in despair. He couldn't help but wonder why everyone was suddenly working so hard, remembering how lazy they used to be when the old count was alive. The vassals, fearing his supposed anger, pushed themselves to work even harder, though he was really just thinking about not wanting to die. He realized his vassals were probably working diligently because of the rumors that he was a genius mastermind, but he still wondered why they wouldn't come when he called. He wished they would handle things on their own. Magical fire sparked in the air as someone spoke to him, praising his surprising magic talent and calling him young master. He was shown holding a small glowing light, indicating he was practicing magic. The person complimented his amazing talent for reaching the second circle in just 2 years of self-study, asking when he developed such skill. Magical sparks flew as the person explained that it usually takes 4 years of teaching to reach that level, and magic itself is a born talent. The person acknowledged that his magical talent was indeed decent enough. The young master admitted he had practiced magic very hard for self-defense. He demonstrated remarkable control over his magic, creating complex patterns of energy. Despite his skill, he questioned the value of it as he floated effortlessly with mana around him. He felt his magic was still only half-baked and not truly powerful. He confessed that he was initially excited to use magic in this fantasy world, as he playfully manipulated small magical wisps. His early experiences with magic were filled with enthusiasm, showing a rush of energy. He had planned to study magic slowly once his main plan was finished and he was safe. However, with urgent threats to his life, he realized a critical truth. His mana hole, or magical capacity, was incredibly small. Frustrated, he mumbled that nothing's working out as he tried to channel his limited mana. He explained that one's mana hole is like an athlete's natural build, a fixed amount of power you are born with, and his was a lot. His own mana hole was, to his dismay, quite small. How truly tiny his mana capacity was, making it a significant limitation, and concluded that if his current magical training didn't work, there was only one other path to take. An attendant cheerfully announced that an invitation to the ball had finally arrived for the young master, making him wonder what it meant. The scene transformed into a large, elegant ballroom, sparkling with chandeliers and gilded decorations, setting the stage for a grand event. The young master entered the elegant ballroom, observing the many nobles mingling and socializing. He instantly felt exhausted just being there, before any real interaction had even begun. He noted that this was a common ball held in the southern Asteria kingdom for nobles to meet and exchange information. Many elegantly dressed nobles danced and conversed, showcasing the formal social setting. Since he was soon to become a count, he decided to use this chance to build important connections, looking determined as his attendant watched. He explained to his attendant that forming relationships with other nobles was vital for his future peace and stability. However, as he began to approach others, they subtly but quickly turned away, avoiding his gaze. He tried to engage with people, but they swiftly moved past him, leaving him feeling awkward. The nobles continued to actively steer clear of him and his attendant, creating a noticeable empty space around them. His attendant tried to comfort him, telling him not to be upset, but he insisted he wasn't. He claimed he had fully expected this kind of cold reception, even as his attendant gave him an oops look. He told Evan he was leaving, knowing full well that he would be ignored for lacking class. He mused that unlike during great-grandfather's prestigious days, the current Palacio is the degenerate of the East. But I didn't come here without any thought. He intended to use his secretly practiced social skills to overcome the social hurdles, as he gently swirled the wine. He tried to start a conversation by complimenting the wine's unique taste. Especially, the aroma seemed unique. He then boldly requested to take a few bottles of the specialty wine home with him. He attempted to offer a gentle smile, believing it was essential for good socializing, but his expression looked intense and demanding. The lady, looking quite startled, quickly promised to speak to her father and have the wine prepared right away. He realized his smile must have been intimidating, and his attempt at charm had gone completely wrong. His attendant secretly chuckled, thinking he was a worse scoundrel than his brothers, using intimidation to force limited edition specialty wine. He, however, remained in denial, convincing himself the lady was just unusually shy. He later reviewed the impressive list of loot he had acquired. His attendant found the list impressive, including premium items like a horse, tea, crafted metal, and Malentino specialty wine, but the young master looked dejected, lamenting all his hard study of wine had been useless for actual socializing. He realized the Palacio family's reputation was worse than he'd imagined, and the rumor that he eliminated those scoundrel brothers made everyone actively avoid him. All his efforts to build connections had failed, and he wondered if he had actually pushed people even further away, feeling they were distant. He decided to get some fresh air, walking away from the main hall with his attendant, under the watchful eye of a red-haired woman. The red-haired woman, elegant and thoughtful, observed him leave while sipping her wine. She seemed to be contemplating something deeply after seeing the young master's retreat. The young master stood on a moonlit balcony, sighing and wondering where he had gone wrong. Suddenly, a polite voice from behind asked him if they could talk for a moment, making him wonder who it could possibly be that wanted to speak to him. He turned around, surprised that anyone would approach him after being so thoroughly avoided, questioning who it was. He started to introduce himself, still cautious and surprised by the interaction. The person was Loria, the third daughter of the Altia Duke family, looking a little nervous. He instantly recognized the name Altia, understanding its significance. He greeted her, noting that the Altia family was one of the 3 masterminds in psychedelia. He then connected her family to the degenerates of the north, realizing she came from a powerful but infamous house. He quickly deduced that anyone from such a prominent and notorious family who would speak to him was certainly not ordinary. He felt a jolt of confusion, wondering why he didn't remember this particular child from the game's story. Loria looked startled as he seemed to realize she was an unknown variable in his understanding of the world. Loria cut straight to the chase, urgently asking him to lend her your strength. He looked at her, waiting for her explanation. She then delivered a shocking truth. She would soon be assassinated. The two stood on the elegant balcony under the night sky, facing a sudden and dangerous alliance. This marked the beginning of Chapter 5 of Became the Patron of Villains. A possessed person's little tip revealed that the young master used self-help books found in the Palatial Mansion's study to improve his social skills. A young woman asks for help, pleading, "Please lend me your strength." She reveals, "I will soon be assassinated." The young woman looks scared and worried as she desperately pleads her case to the man, who appears contemplative. She continues, "Even though I received my father's affection, and was protected as a mistress's daughter until now. Currently, with Duke Altia becoming critically ill, she shares the dire consequences of her situation under the night sky. My older sisters will kill me." She warns the man that if he doesn't help, they will both die. The man reacts internally, thinking, no wonder I didn't remember her. The young woman looks on with wide, desperate eyes as the man processes the information. The young woman believes the man has a special power and could save her, but he chooses to decline her request, stating firmly, "I must decline." She quickly offers him half of her family's fortune in exchange for help, but the man says he must leave immediately. He thinks her situation is sad, but he feels he can barely protect himself and shouldn't get involved in such dangerous matters. He further admits that even if he wanted to help, unlike the rumors, I have no abilities. He tells her that, contrary to rumors, he actually has no special abilities to help her, just staring with a slight hint of sweat, dejected as the man dismisses her plea. The man breathes a sigh of relief, glad to have avoided her request. As he walks away toward an open doorway, the young woman calls out, "Good things will come your way." The man walks through a bright hall, leaving the young woman behind. She finishes, "I hope you meet a good ally." Meanwhile, a hooded figure watches from the shadows as the narration states, "Altia approached the great moon." The figure immediately decides, "I should report to the red moon that." The figure confirms that this interaction should be fine, noting, according to the information, that one is the only Altia not connected to Avalon, so she's not on Radon's disposal list. The young woman, Altia, is shown looking sad and isolated in the grand hall. The hooded figure continues their assessment. Things have gotten easier since all the other Altias will be disposed of. The second figure confirms, "Yes, we will follow the Red Moon's orders." The figures look up at the ceiling of the hall. Their focus is strategic. Let's focus on blocking information so the Avalon incident doesn't reach that person. The man, Great Moon, stands in the opulent hall, looking thoughtfully composed. The narration shifts as the hooded figures exit the scene. The man senses something unusual in the environment. Right then, a red-haired woman appears and greets him. "Hello." The man is surprised by the attention, wondering, "That greeting was for me, right? This time, can I really build connections with nobles?" He politely responds, "Yes, hello." The woman, who has striking red hair, hides part of her face behind a fan as she engages him. The man realizes with a shock that this woman must be another one of the dangerous masterminds he knows from the game. He thinks, of course there's no way someone approaches me first would be an ordinary noble. He politely returns her greeting. The man is left momentarily confused as the woman continues speaking. The man replies, realizing her recognition of him, "Of course, you're famous in many ways." The scene transitions to a grand, dark, schematic view of cities. The text introduces the three great masterminds of Asteria Kingdom. One section labels Altia of the North. The visual continues showing symbols representing the masterminds. Palatio of the East is shown next to an eye symbol over a large building. The final structure shown is fiery red, associated with and the degenerates of the West Zenonia. Lady Zenonia smiles confidently at the man. The text overlay asks, "Famous, you say? Is that so?" A title card identifies her further. The eldest daughter of Count Zenonia, Kalia. A group of tough-looking enforcers stands behind a pedestal, illustrating Zenonia's power structure. Zenonia is a smarter corporate thug. Lady Zenonia sits confidently on a throne, wearing a commanding suit. The man appears panicked in a chibi-style bubble, thinking about his goals. "I need connections that help with a peaceful, noble life." He concludes that his plans are already falling apart, and he must avoid involvement, thinking, "For a comfortable life, I absolutely must not get involved." He quickly compliments her beauty while leaning away slightly. Lady Zenonia smiles faintly, acknowledging his attempt to compliment her. "Thanks for the compliment." She suggests they talk more, asking, "I'd like to talk more, how about it?" He declines, wishing she would just leave him alone. "I'd like that, but there are too many eyes watching right now. Please just let me go peacefully." Lady Zenonia smirks, confirming his reputation, just as the rumors say. She then departs, leaving him uneasy after saying, "I look forward to seeing you again." The man wonders, "What?" He stands confused, looking at her back as she walks away from the gathering. He wonders, What was? Wondering what that whole encounter was about. The scene shifts back to the hooded figures confirming their success. Information about the Avalon incident is being blocked well. But there's more to worry about now. That one keeps watching that person. The man is seen sipping a drink while an unknown figure seemingly spies from a window above. The hooded figure comments, "Seems like tailing." The hooded figures leap from the balcony, planning their next move. There were no separate orders, so let's observe and then dispose of them. The hooded figures swiftly disappear from the grand hall into the bright light. The scene changes. The man's servant asks him. They stand before a large, dark canyon, overgrown with moss, leading into shadow. The servant expresses doubt. Is this canyon really what we've been looking for? The man looks up confidently, confirming his goal. Finally found it. My real objective. The field effects are the same, so it's definite. He admits the risk of failure, but affirms his certainty. It would be sad if the third attempt is also a bust. This time it's real. He continues explaining his true reason for being there. Actually, the reason I came to this distant region using the ball as an excuse is because of a labyrinth in the south. Labyrinth of Whispers. A map of the labyrinth is displayed. The scene shifts inside the structure, gleaming with blue light. After solving riddles in a total of 8 rooms, the man smiles confidently, showing off his preparation. I memorized the entire walkthrough. Let me show you the fruits of level grinding. The servant reacts with awe as they see the glowing script on the floor. Wow, to actually see the labyrinth entrance? The man reflects on the experience versus the reality. Even though I came here countless times in the game, it feels different. The servant is amazed by his knowledge, as the man almost slips, saying, I came here often. The man quickly tries to cover his mistake. Oops, I zoned out. Joking, there are ways. Let's go in. His servant warns him to be serious about the dangers ahead. Suddenly, terrifying, red-winged creatures appear, roaring eek. The ground cracks and shatters violently as the monsters emerge. More dark, bat-like creatures fly through the murky, dark air. The servant warns the man that getting a riddle wrong will result in a merciless attack. He is clearly anxious. Eerie cracking and breaking sounds echo in the tense atmosphere. The man remains calm despite the servant's visible worry, leaning over something. The servant wonders how the man can keep such a calm expression in this dangerous situation. He reflects that even after 4 years together, he still doesn't truly understand his young master, listing his good deeds, evil organization elimination, paid off someone's debt, rescued orphans, and helped slaves alongside delivering messages. The servant is shocked by how much the man knows about this place when he rarely leaves home. The man calmly states, I got the answer right, but that has to finish before it. The servant admits his loyalty, saying the reason he follows his mysterious master is because everything turned out to be good deeds. The servant observes the door beginning to open, questioning the master's plan. Oh, it's opening. What exactly are you trying to do this time, young master? The man grimaces, feeling unwell as the door opens to reveal brutal sights. The door is finally opening. I feel like throwing up. I knew it, but I didn't expect it to be this brutal. They enter a chamber filled with shining gold and other treasures piled high. The man signals to his servant, who is looking around in awe, I broke. The man tells his servant to only take the black ring, and then they will leave. The servant questions taking the seemingly useless black ring, noting, the size is a bit big. The man insists, if you take something else, it will only cause trouble. The man puts on the black ring, successfully activating the power it holds, exclaiming, finally got the restriction. He assures his servant they can leave safely now. Nothing dangerous on the way back, so don't worry. He smiles, feeling satisfied. Anyway, thanks to the walkthrough, we cleared it easily. His servant interrupts with a question. The servant asks, young master, did you predict this too? The servant continues, realizing the new threat. Looks like the rock piles in the canyon were golems. Huge stone golems armed with spears awaken and loom over them. The golems begin to move, kicking up dust in the dark reddish environment. The servant warns that these unknown enemies are the worst, expressing his wish to get the young master to safety. Man, however, stops his servant, declaring, I'll do it this time. The servant reacts with surprise. What? The man looks up, preparing himself for the engagement. The servant yells a warning. Young master, whatever you're planning to do, finding an escape route is the top priority. The man prepares to fight, positioning himself against the charging golem that aims a spear at him. The golem's attack misses or is blocked as the ground shakes around them. The man prepares to unleash his magic against the massive glowing enemy. The servant watches in shock as the man prepares to fight. The servant yells that the man's current power level is insufficient. Wait, second circle magic isn't enough. The man looks resolute, ready to activate something new. He holds up his hand, preparing to use the ring. In Ein, a dynamic effect shows the magic beginning to gather, shaking the environment. Intense energy surges around him as he prepares to invoke the restriction. Bright light envelops the man as the power takes effect. Dark, mysterious smoke swirls around him during the magical activation. A vast cosmic space opens up before him, presenting a glowing ring of energy containing text. Fragment that carries on the great will of Nyakula. The cosmic voice commands him, speak the 2 restrictions that can be invoked. The man looks slightly panicked as he reflects on his knowledge from the game. In the game, it was a selection window, but a voice. A close-up of the powerful, imposing entity's face is shown. The man looks down as the entity makes him realize the gravity of the situation. The voice seems to make me recognize that this place is reality. He prepares to state his first command. First, the entity demands a response. Speak. The man, focusing intently, makes his declaration. I shall absolutely perform the use of Babylonia's hand seals when using magic. The voice asks about his motivation. What do you seek to gain from this? The man replies with determination, the power to twist the laws of the world a bit more. The voice grants the request, permitted. The man stands firm, ready for the next step. The man prepares to state his second restriction. He focuses intensely, showing his concentration. He states his second restriction, I shall restrictively perform the great Babylonia's incantations when using magic. The voice asks for his desired outcome, and he answers, my desire is the same. He maintains a serious expression as he commits to these powerful new rules. The voice seems to silently consider his answer. He wonders if he made any mistakes, relying on his preparation. He trusts his knowledge, concluding that hand seals and incantations are the best way to maximize magic attack power. The voice confirms his choices. Accepted. A powerful voice thanks him. Human who remembers the hand seals and mysteries of the forgotten great god, I express gratitude to you who carries on the will. The man is puzzled by the term carrying on a will and questions the meaning. He sees the ring being absorbed into his hand, confirming the restriction is set. The voice warns him that it will always be watching. The servant looks on fearfully at the surging power. The servant yells, terrified, reminding the master of the danger. Young master, second circle magic isn't enough. The golems continue to advance, their symbols pulsing with red light. The servant believes their current magic is too weak to overcome these enemies. But the man is already preparing for battle, gathering bright blue energy. He recalls that his lightning sphere used to be weak, even at maximum mana, without the restriction. He states that now it is time to see the true power he gained. The golems surround them, an imposing threat. He forms a sphere of crackling lightning in his palm, visibly more potent than before. He is ready to test the new restriction and understand its price. Blue electrical energy crackles around his hands as he prepares to unleash his enhanced magic. Sparks of lightning dance in the air, demonstrating his increased magical strength. Despite the power, he notes it still feels not enough. Fascinated by the constant presence of the ring on his thumb, the servant watches the man prepare to unleash his power. Still worried, the man begins to gather a bright blue energy in his hand. He recalls that his lightning sphere was once very weak, even when he used all his energy. No matter how much he trained, that was his limit without the restriction. Now, however, it is time to see the true power he gained. Golems are a formidable threat, surrounding them completely. He creates a sphere of crackling lightning in his palm, more powerful than before. He is ready to test the new restriction and understand the cost of its power. Blue electrical energy crackles around his hands as he prepares to unleash his enhanced magic. Sparks of lightning dance in the air, showing his newfound magical strength. Despite the power, he senses it's still not enough, feeling the constant presence of the ring on his thumb, which he finds quite fascinating. He admits internally, I zoned out a bit. It's time to test the restriction and its price. Blue energy begins to gather in his hand, swirling with controlled power. The magic grows brighter, forming a radiant orb in his outstretched palm. He holds the glowing blue sphere, his eyes sharp and focused. Arcs of blue light surround him, building up the magic's intensity. The collected magic takes the form of a brilliant orb. Cracks of lightning erupt from the orb, spreading rapidly around him. The main character stands strong as the lightning magic becomes more powerful and widespread. More intense light bursts from below, adding to the immense magical energy. The magic pulses, sending out stronger and brighter electrical blasts. The lightning fills the entire area, creating a dazzling display of light. A huge blinding light explodes outwards, showing the immense force of his spell. The main character stands tall, bathed in the brilliant glow of his activated magic. The powerful blue light continues to crackle and expand with raw energy. Electricity surges across the ground, causing the very earth to vibrate. He unleashes a massive lightning sphere, striking everything in its wide path. The magic transforms, now called diffraction linear, still glowing intensely. His hands are enveloped in arcs of blue lightning, deeply connected to the magic. He performs a specific hand seal, further boosting the lightning's power. The main character channels the overwhelming blue lightning, his face determined. Powerful bolts of lightning shoot forward from his hands with incredible speed. The magical blasts hit with great force, shattering objects in their way. The strong lightning splits, hitting multiple targets at the same time. The bolts continue to spread, striking various points with precision. The mercenary leader is utterly shocked by the main character's power. The lightning continues its destructive path, tearing through the surroundings. Large stone golems are caught in the electrical storm, breaking apart. More golems are struck, showing how widely the magic affects the area. The lightning fades away, leaving behind a scene of immense destruction. Tiny sparks of electricity disappear into the air, marking the end of the spell. Two characters stand next to a crumbling golem, surveying the damage caused by the magic. The ground is etched with glowing cracks, evidence of the powerful attack. The lightning tears through a golem's arm, breaking it into pieces. The golem's body cracks and crumbles under the intense magical assault. Its arm completely shatters from the raw power of the lightning. The golem's pieces scatter, demonstrating the magic's devastating impact. The golem's head is directly hit and disintegrates into dust. Only small fragments of the once formidable golem remain. The ground is littered with broken stone and glowing magic symbols, showing the vast reach of the attack. The mercenary leader is utterly stunned, calling the display of power insane. He looks completely overwhelmed and amazed by what he just witnessed. This marks the start of Chapter 7. He asks if the main character was hiding his strength, finding it hard to believe. The mercenary leader says he has never seen such power in 15 years of work, thinking it impossible. He asks if the magic was truly just second circle, and the main character confirms it. The mercenary leader remains silent, trying to process the incredible display. The main character admits he didn't think the magic would be this strong in the game. He recalls that in the game's Psychedelia, magic could be strengthened each turn with hand seals or spoken spells, boosting its power by 10%. He remembers how he enhanced his chain lightning magic in the game. He explains that he used 4 incantations and hand seals this time. He continued this process for 5 turns in total. This allowed him to set up a very large and powerful lightning spell. Additionally, he received the price of the restriction, which requires him to absolutely use hand seals and incantations with magic, given his knowledge of the mysteries of the forgotten great god. This unique ability likely amplified his magic even further, far beyond normal limits. Because of all these factors, the magic's power was probably doubled. Even so, he finds second circle magic shouldn't be that strong and was surprised by how much the result exceeded his expectations. The mercenary leader groans, "Ha! Now we escape." The two characters walk away, relieved to have made it out alive. The mercenary leader feels exhausted, claiming the escape was even harder than the battle. He wonders aloud who could have created such a difficult and unpleasant place. The main character considers the Labyrinth of Whispers and recalls it had another name. He sees online discussions about Paleon Labyrinth, identifying it as the Labyrinth of Whispers, a mid-game area for gaining levels where players can retry endlessly. The director said it's the labyrinth owner. He is shocked when the mercenary leader casually mentions that his friend Paleon created it. Still reeling from the revelation, he asks for clarification, and then decides they must head back east, feeling unwell after 3 difficult weeks. The mercenary leader exclaims, "Ugh," while resting his head against the main character. The main character reflects on how matching hand seals to magic increases its power. He also considers how specific incantations enhance magic properties, as per the game's mechanics. Just now, each incantation visibly transformed. Unlike games where only numbers change, he observes the incantation physically transforming the magic. He wonders if his exceptional mana control, despite having a mana hole, allows him to see the property changes. He decides to experiment more once his mana fully recovers. Anyway, everything worked out well, so that's fortunate. A mysterious figure walks through a dark, quiet forest at night. The cloaked figure stops and looks up at the bright moon in the sky. The figure's eyes glow as she glances around her. She then gazes at a large, peculiar orb visible in the distance. Her steps are quiet and purposeful as she moves through the night. She thinks about the age of the forgotten foreign god, as ancient symbols light up the ground beneath her. She reflects on the important characters of the Elenio Empire and their roles in history. A young woman with green hair and piercing eyes appears, looking serious. She recalls Paleon being called a coward for leaving his only friend behind. She also recalls Alakulaka, a figure who bravely blocked the invasion of the Black Things and took the hearts of the faithful. A knight in shining armor battles a colossal, red dragon-like beast, surrounded by an intense light. This valiant warrior is identified as the brilliant emperor, the Great Paleon. She was able to learn all this because she was born receiving a great mission and inherited the ancient library. She is shown in a magnificent library, surrounded by countless glowing books. Floating gracefully, she recalls the mercenary leader's casual mention that his friend Paleon created it. The young woman looks down thoughtfully. She recognizes the Bloody Queen, a historical figure, as being connected to these events. She knew this was no ordinary matter, but the main character stands, considering how the Great Moon was a friend whom Paleon showed respect to. Moreover, the incantations that were whispered don't even exist in the ancient library. She looks thoughtfully, wondering about the main character's true identity. The main character looks thoughtful. She stands alone in a moonlit forest, lost in thought. She concludes that the Red Moon's words were completely correct. A hint of sadness crosses her face, even as she smiles slightly. She feels a pang of shame for merely obeying orders. She walks away with a pensive expression, still reflecting on everything. Someone asks her if she successfully found the information she sought. She simply replies that she did not. Another person reports that the execution of the black person has been completed. A figure is shown falling violently after the execution. The reporter states that the person's neck spun 2 full rotations in empty air, and that they need to arrange for disposal. The young woman looks on with a thoughtful and troubled expression. The full moon casts a serene glow over the night landscape. Trees stand silhouetted against the bright moonlight, peaceful and still. The scene gradually brightens, hinting at the approaching dawn. Inside a grand building, likely the Zenonia Count family estate, a red-haired woman considers the Zenonia Count family, confirming rumors about them. She finds her own emotionless state quite unsettling. The main character observes her, noting her eyes are like an abyss. She reflects on how people say she is famous. She agrees that Count Zenonia is indeed powerful and well-known. But, she adds with a pause, he pointed out that it's her, someone who doesn't even socialize, who is famous. She questions her father, asking if he doesn't find the situation strange. Her father, the Count, calmly explains that it's simply because she holds the title of Count. The red-haired woman subtly touches her neck. She feels a faint mark on her neck, a hidden detail. She moves closer to her father, pulling him into an embrace with a sinister undertone. She reveals her plan. Even if she turned her father into an idiot and acts as the actual family head, no one would know. She asks how he figured it out. He replies, well, there are too many eyes watching now. Even the tail she sent was already aware of her intentions. Someone cries out in alarm, calling, "See Count Kalia." Count Kalia rushes into the room, asking what the urgent matter is. Count Kalia tells the red-haired woman to return to her room. The man who screamed falls to the ground, blood splattered around him, clearly injured or worse. The man's body is seen suspended momentarily before hitting the floor. Count Kalia explains that since the imprint did not activate, it means she hadn't yet revealed the secret. He then tells her she intentionally placed the object in his room, to which she replies with a scornful laugh. She demands to know how he figured it out and how he found her weak point so easily. She smiles dangerously, a coiled snake design appearing behind her, hinting at her manipulative and cunning nature. A question mark hangs in the air, emphasizing the mystery of Count Kalia's sudden insight. The mercenary leader, still weary from their adventure, rests his head on the main character's lap. A helpful hint suggests that Golem soldiers in the labyrinth have low intelligence, so if you don't face them for more than 3 seconds, you can escape. Day. A grand mansion stands under the night sky as a carriage makes its way up the long driveway, bringing a weary traveler back home. The location is identified as the Altia Duke family territory. The youngest daughter, Loria, arrives at the Altia Duke family territory, reflecting on how someone she knows is truly extraordinary. Loria thinks of this person as a powerful figure, a noble of the underworld. Loria recalls the cold, calculating eyes of that mysterious figure, reminding her of her own father. She realizes this person is someone she should never cross. He was her very last hope in a desperate situation, yet she feels sure he would never agree to a deal that brought him only losses. Loria remembers her older siblings, the eldest son, Tamalian, who had stripped her of her power and assets. She also thinks of the eldest daughter, Malian, second daughter, Parani, and second son, Kig. Feeling utterly alone and without anything left, she feels she has nothing left. Loria stands isolated and vulnerable before the imposing mansion, a stark symbol of the power she once had and now lacked. She reflects on how she had barely survived by relying on her father's kindness. But now she is lost and doesn't know what to do next. Suddenly, a servant rushes in, calling out to Lady Loria with an urgent sound. The servant announces Loria's return and quickly shares shocking news about Lady Perrine and Lord Kig. The servant reveals that Lady Perrine and Lord Kig have taken their own lives, leaving Loria stunned. Loria is completely shocked by the terrible news, her eyes wide with disbelief. She questions how her siblings, who would not hesitate to betray their own family, could possibly take their own lives. Loria feels something is deeply wrong and questions if it makes sense that people who wouldn't hesitate to stab family members took their own lives. Overwhelmed by the shocking events, Loria lets out a cry of distress. More servants rush to Loria's side, seeing her in despair. Loria sees the lifeless body of Timalian, her eldest brother. She also sees Lady Malian, both of them dead with swords piercing through them. Horror. Utterly confused and traumatized by the sight of her deceased siblings. High above the mansion, a figure moves swiftly in the dark, barely visible against the night sky. A mysterious person with light hair leaps effortlessly across the rooftops of the mansion, a powerful and agile presence. With a powerful leap, the mysterious figure takes off into the sky, leaving the scene behind under the pale moonlight. The figure smiles slyly, his eyes glowing faintly. The figure declares that the task or disposal is now complete, then disappears into the distance, leaving only a lingering sense of mystery behind. Loria shivers, slowly understanding the dark implications of what has happened. She remembers the figure's words, "Good things will come your way," realizing the chilling meaning behind them. She thinks of this person as someone who cleverly hides his claws and waits for the right moment to seize his position. This person is the Count family's true mastermind. Loria trembles, realizing the scary truth of the situation. She realizes that just like him, she became the sole heir to the Duke family overnight. Loria lets out a sigh, muttering, "Ha." She wonders what kind of ridiculous bargain she made with this powerful and dangerous person. She is standing alone in the vast hallway, realizing she cannot turn back. She holds her hand to her chest, thinking about what happens if she betrays him, noting there are already plenty of precedents. Loria decides she has no other choice but to proceed on the path she has chosen. Her expression shows a mix of resolve and anxiety as she worries about what would happen if she ever crossed him. Loria stands alone in the vast empty hallway, a solitary figure burdened by her new circumstances. Loria holds her hand to her chest, her expression a mix of resolve and anxiety. The story jumps forward to 2 months later. The scene shifts, showing Loria holding her hand to her chest, determined to continue. 2 months later, a messenger arrives at the Count's home, stating he is there under orders from Duke Altia. The Count, surprised, questions Duke Altia as a realization dawns on him. Another person nearby responds, "Wow." The messenger presents a valuable bottle of Cernance wine, which the Count notes is worth several thousand gold per bottle. He reads a card saying it is from Loria Altia, and wonders why she would send him such an expensive gift, especially since he felt guilty for not helping her. The Count reads the card that says, "With respect, Loria Altia," and wonders why she would give him this gift when he felt guilty for not helping her. The attendant confirms that the Duke personally arranged the gift and insisted it be delivered directly. The Count is taken aback, repeating, "The Duke personally?" The Count quickly puts the pieces together, realizing that the youngest daughter, Loria, has somehow become Duke Altia. Loria, now Duke, is shown diligently working at her desk, signing documents. She stretches, feeling tired after 2 very busy months as the new Duke. She lets out a sigh, reflecting that after her father's passing, she held a succession ceremony and took on the title of Duke, a position she never imagined holding. Loria stands in her new grand office, reflecting that originally she couldn't even enter this office. She reflects that though it was a sudden death of her siblings, she avoided all suspicion regarding her rise to power. She recalls being aided by the alibi of the ball, which kept her free from blame. Loria recalls how at that time, even her secret organization was dealt with by her siblings. So when she returned to the mansion, she truly was in a state of having lost all power. She wonders if the mastermind behind everything might have even used her weak situation for his own benefit. She was dizzy when she found out later, remembering how he first pretended not to care or help her. On the surface, he casually declined her request for help, but afterward, he handled everything perfectly, making her wonder how many moves ahead he is seeing. Loria stares intently, thinking about the mysterious figure. She realizes that he must have extended his hand to her because he needs Altia for some plan. Though she's integrated all organizations under Altia, it can't match the power he's hiding. She thinks of Palladio, an underworld boss who built influence solely through business. Loria wonders what unique advantage she has that Palladio needs. She concludes that he means he wants something else from her that he does not possess. She realizes he seeks the prestige of Altia to manipulate the political arena from the shadows, concluding that this must be it. Loria glances at the portraits of past leaders on the wall, thinking about Palladio's amassed wealth of coins. She concludes that he desires her ability to manipulate the political arena from the shadows. She realizes that he seeks the prestige of Altia to gain political influence, seeing herself as a chess piece. Loria stands tall and composed, embodying her new role as Duke, looking at the family portraits. For now, she decides it's best to focus on what needs to be done, expecting her mysterious benefactor to contact her soon. Loria stands tall and composed, embodying her new role as Duke. She hopes the thank you gift she sent to the Count was to his liking, smiling warmly. The Count's attendant prepares to leave as the conversation concludes, while the Count expresses confusion, wondering why the mastermind is acting that way, especially since he helped Loria when she was in danger. The Count senses that there's something very unusual and unsettling about the whole situation. Several months later in winter, 5 years before the main story of the game begins, Loria, who was threatened with murder, became Duke. The Count wonders why the mastermind is acting that way again. The beautiful mansion is now covered in a blanket of snow, marking the arrival of winter, and the Count feels something strange. A servant greets the Count, respectfully calling him young master, and then asks if he should now call him Count. The Count is shown looking out a large window. The attendant asks if he should now call him Count, to which the Count replies that the succession ceremony hasn't happened yet, but he can use the title after the new year. The Count admits becoming a Count wasn't in his comfortable life plan, which originally involved avoiding succession fights, settling in road mill, and going on gourmet travels. He admits that as he got used to this work, he can now enjoy the advantages of nobility to the maximum, noting the work-life balance was better than expected. And he receives a letter from Utia. He takes the letter, murmuring, He then asks his attendant if there's any new information about the assassins who killed Leo. The attendant reports that the investigation is still ongoing, and he asks the Count if he is seeking revenge. The Count muses that the things gradually changing from the game are probably butterfly effects caused by him. He calmly states that he is simply preparing for any possible future situations, which makes the attendant remark that he sounds quite like a Count now. The Count simply gives a vague answer, "Let's say so," as he opens the letter, wondering what the content will be this time. He opens the letter, curious about its contents, which mention Deus's puppet theater improving greatly now that they are doing well. The letter continues, describing how Xiaoleng is now fully engrossed in playing games with friends. It also mentions Ryan quietly reading books but frequently making things. Finally, it mentions that Radan has taken a liking to landscaping, which warms the Count's heart more and more. Though he's never seen their faces, watching the children grow and supporting them makes him feel like a proud father. He wonders how old the 5 great sins are now. He asks his attendant about the children's ages, noting that they are soon ready to go out into the world. The attendant confirms that most of the children he rescued are around that age, and some have already left the orphanage earlier. The Count remembers rescuing the 5 children, the 5 great sins, when they were younger. The children, depicted as the 5 great sins, bow deeply and sincerely thank him for raising them. The Count feels a bit awkward, realizing that it's time to gradually send them out to live their own lives. His attendant seems surprised, recalling that the Count once kept them because they were considered sick, but the Count admits, right, that's how it was. explaining they are healthy now and it's time to think about their future. He reasons that since they were cared for to prevent them from becoming sins, they should now be able to take care of themselves. The Count nods, pleased that everyone seems healthy, and remembers the specific talents mentioned for each boss in the game's story. He recalls that Utia has a talent for faith and Deus has a talent for the sword in battle. He also remembers Ryan has a talent for research. He recalls Seo Long has talent as a warrior. Finally, he remembers Radon has talent as an apostle. He believes that if he places them in the right positions with those talents, they will have the ability to secure good positions. The Count begins preparing letters, meticulously writing each one. He thinks the children would be happy to receive gifts, saying, a perfect plan. He was also going to give them presents anyway. Outside the window, a beautiful winter landscape is visible, with snow falling softly under an orange sky. The Count finishes writing the letters, feeling pleased with his accomplishment, thinking the children would be happy if he gives them gifts. His attendant announces he will be leaving to deliver the letters. The Count jokingly asks if he can at least get some small benefits if the children succeed later on. He dramatically declares that the children should receive their letters and venture into the wider world. The special directive has now reached the children, and they receive the letters and venture into the wider world. One of the children, a woman in a purple dress, stands looking serious as the directive has arrived for exceptionally this one of them. All the children are gathered, each holding a personal letter, looking surprised or thoughtful. One of the children, with cat ears, excitedly exclaims, "Wow!" after receiving their letter. Another child looks at her letter with a gentle and thoughtful expression. The white-haired girl also holds her letter, her expression serious and focused. A special note reveals that Ryan loves to explore knowledge, suggesting that giving her a good book as a gift might make her a friend. A new set of orders had arrived, with each person receiving their own individual directive. Everyone stood holding their letters, wondering what important tasks lay ahead for them. Someone held a small folded letter, looking at it with a surprised expression. The cat-eared girl exclaimed, "Wow," with excitement. A man with light hair held a letter, looking intently at the message written inside. The woman with long green hair seemed thoughtful as she read her own directive. The woman carefully held the new directive, knowing that the person who sent it always gave very important instructions. She decided it was a good idea to read the older letters first to understand everything better. Someone mentioned that the directives had arrived, and this time they were sent to each person individually. Others wondered if they could really read them since only Utia usually got to see such important messages. Since their leaders sent individual directives to everyone, it was clear he thought it was time for them all to see these important messages. A letter appeared, looking like a casual greeting, but everyone wondered if this informal message was indeed a high-level directive. And the group wondered if the letter was a new directive, but it sounded more like a casual chat. One of them explained that the sender always told them to make the directives sound like everyday conversations, then suggested they look at an example. The woman held out an example letter, saying, "Here, look. This was the first important order sent out after an initial greeting letter." This letter was written in a very casual way, sharing personal stories about a brother using the sender as a chair, almost like a friendly chat. The text continued, mentioning an orphanage and tasks. The letter detailed that the sender was counting on them to take care of a certain place. The children gathered around to read the new letters, curious about their contents. One character explained, and this is, while the children looked closely at the contents of the letter they were holding together. The woman with red eyes gave a slight knowing smile while facing the man with dark hair. The man with dark hair asked, "Right, if leaks are the problem, why go through the trouble of letters?" Below, a figure reminded them, "You haven't forgotten, have you? We just need to follow." One of them held a letter with a red seal, a new directive from the mysterious person. She looked serious, thinking about the chillingly firm faith required to follow such high-level orders. The man with dark hair looked down at the letter he held, while the white-haired man stood quietly beside him, waiting. The cat-eared girl exclaimed excitedly, "Then, let's read this directive." The group looked around at each other with murmurs. They seemed to be processing the various instructions received. The man with dark hair read his directive, while the cat-eared girl looked on. A crest featuring swords and a sun was visible behind them. The green-haired woman and the white-haired man looked at their directives together, seeming to discuss destinations like Caliburn, the entertainment city of Laxus, or the labyrinth city of Lartania. The woman with red eyes looked empowered as she read, murmuring about the Holy Kingdom Rosario. The woman stated, "It says what each of you should do, right?" Her posture suggested authority over the group. The man with dark hair listened to the cat-eared girl, who seemed eager about the next step. The green-haired woman reassured the group, saying, "Don't worry, the support will continue." She added that the letter also mentioned where to find certain gifts. The woman with red eyes instructed them, "Good. Remember this, unless that person brings it up first." While she stood facing the group, she finished sternly, mentioning the blue moon is forbidden. The woman held the directive letter close, her expression unyielding. The scene shifted to a bright sunny day where several figures walked along a path outdoors. The white-haired man wearing a dark cloak seemed to be leading the way. The group walked along a wide path in Kurdum, the capital of Caliburn, under a bright blue sky. The narration jumped forward, skipping details about Deus's early life, focusing on how he received his first individual directive, which brought him the unexpected and precious gift of family. 3 months passed, and the person in question had diligently checked through many books in the library. He found that, as expected, there was still no information about magic spells or transformations. 3 months later, the man sat thoughtfully, looking at a book and realizing he had no choice but to try things directly. Another person, perhaps an aide, appeared in the background holding books. The man looked troubled, concluding, "I have no idea what's causing it." Despite the aide mentioning that the Information Guild had found nothing about the assassins, the man worried about the butterfly effect caused by helping the 5 great sins. The scene dramatically showed Loria, who should have died, now looking powerful as Duke Altea amidst the snow, worrying the man below. The man with the eye patch stood, looking concerned toward the other man seated on the couch. The seated man seemed to agree that ignorance was bliss in the situation, considering Loria's dangerous expansion. He suggested they stop investigating the assassins for now. Someone seemed surprised by the decision to stop the investigation. However, the hooded figure explained that almost nothing could escape the powerful Information Guild's network. The hooded figure moved away, stepping onto a path in the void-like background. He reasoned that if searching for something brought danger, it was wiser to stop investigating secret groups. The man looked worried, thinking about the unknown consequences of digging into things that had already gone off track. He decided that if preparing for something might just lead to dying, it was not worth doing. He reasoned that secret groups would only bother him if he interfered with them first. The character decided it was best not to dig into things too much, concluding that secret societies wouldn't bother them unless they interfered first. The man decided it seemed pointless to keep digging into that information and would stop the investigation. Another person then delivered some very surprising news. The news was that Deus was officially knighted in Caliburn, and everyone was talking about this big event. Deus stood looking sharp in his knight's uniform, though he was only seen from the waist down here. The man with the eye patch expressed happiness about Deus being knighted, noting that 3 months had quickly passed since that good news. The man holding skewers expressed amazement, asking if it was true that Deus had already established his own knight order. The other man listened intently. The man with dark hair was surprised to hear Deus created a knight order, wondering if he was already an expert-level fighter or stronger. The man holding skewers seemed impressed by this news. Someone observed how quickly Deus had risen through the ranks, from a simple sword user to an expert. It hadn't been long since he was first knighted, making his rapid progress truly surprising to everyone. Rumors spread quickly that a 5th Master Knight, one of Caliburn's revered swords, would rise within the next 10 years. The boy felt a deep sense of pride watching this talent, while the other character simply enjoyed a snack. Someone thought that Caliburn must be much livelier now because of Deus's actions. 6 months later, time continued to pass in the story. A grand estate stood tall, likely the residence of a noble. It had been a year since the 5 great sins became independent, and the main character was now used to his daily tasks as a count. 1 year later, after getting used to his duties as a count, the man paused his writing, surprised by the exciting new information he just received. Someone was shocked to hear that Deus had become one of Caliburn's legendary 5 swords, wondering if it meant he was now a master knight. The man looked quite shocked, with mysterious energy sparking around his hand. He seemed to be processing something significant, possibly related to Deus's new status as a master. The man seated at the desk asked, "Are only sword masters, right?" as the other figure stood waiting for an answer. The narration explained that sword masters in psychedelia are superhumans who surpassed using regular aura blades, illustrated by a powerful fiery warrior facing off against a blue spectral figure. Another powerful figure with white hair stood looking stern, reinforcing the power level context. A true sword master unlocks a special power called derivation. The man looked concerned, saying that Deus was just below the highest level for a sword master, as he hadn't yet created a unique derivation. However, the nation still bestowed the special title of Master Knight upon him. The scene shifted to an explosive blue light effect, indicating a powerful moment. Deus won against the 4th sword, a clear sign of his growing power. The narration explained that the country of Caliburn had lost one of its master knights to the barbarians from the north, after a war spanning more than 10 years. The man looked thoughtful, realizing that even with incredible talent, it still took over 2 decades for someone to reach the peak of their abilities, showing how demanding the path to becoming a true master is. The narration confirmed that the legendary first sword, Reinhardt, became a master knight at the young age of 32, known for his incredible strength. A figure in shining armor holds a glowing sword, ready for action as leaves drift around them. This moment marks the beginning of a crucial new chapter. Reinhardt was a temporary ally, known for having swung a sword since he was 5 years old, and being the youngest swordmaster. The text box indicated that Reinhardt would be excluded when the current episode ends. The fierce-looking Reinhardt stood confidently holding his sword. The person wondered if Deus, who was only missing one final step, would soon become a full swordmaster too. He hoped to gain some benefit or crumbs from his amazing success. He thought about the other sins who grew up together and how they must be in contact. He felt sad that they never even thanked him for his efforts. He wondered if he would not even get a little bit of appreciation from them. The truth was, only Utia ever sent him letters. Even after moving to the Holy Kingdom, the main character kept getting letters. These letters always included updates and greetings about the sins who had grown up with them. He thought that the others must be talking to each other, It was a little sad that they never even said thanks for the gift, even if they hadn't met in person. He felt a little disappointed about something. The main character then decided to get back to his original focused mindset, slapping his face to wake up. The man felt immense relief and gratitude that the 5 great sins did not awaken and bring ruin to the kingdom. All that truly mattered to him was that everyone was safe and living well. The man felt a tap on his shoulder as he looked out the large window. He thought it was enough that the kids were doing well and living their lives happily. The world seemed to glow with a new light after such a profound and unexpected discovery, bringing back what he thought was lost forever. The magnificent city of Caliburn stood tall under a vibrant purple-tinged sky, its grand spires reaching towards the heavens. The view focused on the grand mansion in the high noble residential area of Curedham, the residence of the illustrious Eclipse Knight Order. Deus Macallion, the youngest Master Knight and captain of the illustrious Eclipse Knight Order, stood proudly in Curedham. Soldiers of his order stood guard below the grand estate. Deus walked through a grand hall, illuminated by the soft light coming from tall, arched windows. He appeared ready for whatever mission lay ahead. Deus Macallion, the Eclipse Knight Order captain, let out a sigh as he looked out, now recognized as the kingdom's youngest Master Knight. At the window, spotting 2 figures walking in the distance. He had a sudden realization as he watched them approach. A young girl with bright purple hair smiles and waves, happily calling out, "Big brother." She is one of the precious family members Deus thought he had lost forever. This confident man was Deus Macallion, the captain of the Eclipse Knight Order and the youngest Master Knight. He now reflects on his past when he had lost everything to the Black Things. The man looked away from the view, clearing his throat quietly. He seemed to be collecting his thoughts before speaking about the past. Even after a year, the person still felt embarrassed remembering that time. This was when they had lost everything to the shadowy Black Things. Dark, shadowy forces viciously attacked, impaling a loved one and spilling their blood. This tragic moment marked the brutal loss of a family once thought precious as life itself. The young man reached out as if to grasp something, but dark energy swirled around him, showing his distress. Having lost everything to the terrifying Black Things, all that remained for him was uncontrollable rage. A figure with purple hair cries out in sorrow, reaching out for a glowing crystal. This crystal represents the family they believed was lost forever, something more precious than life itself. Deus felt an uncontrollable rage and despair after losing everything to the dark forces. He unleashed his fury as a smaller, distant figure looked on within the swirling dark energy. The scene was dark, with a young person's white hair visible in the dim light. In that place, the only feeling that remained was a burning hatred, centered around a glowing object. Having lost everything to dark forces, the young man was filled with uncontrollable rage and vowed for revenge. He held onto a shiny, sharp object, reflecting on the long road he had traveled and the missions he undertook. The great moon saving their life wasn't enough for this person to offer loyalty. Instead, it was the promise of direct revenge that led them to obey and become the Blue Moon. The young man had lost everything, filled with an uncontrollable rage after his family was taken. He then obeyed as the Blue Moon, driven by a promise that he would be allowed to take his revenge directly. As the Blue Moon, the person was shown under a bright purple aura, standing beside the smiling woman from the earlier directives. Because of the promise to let him take revenge directly, he obeyed as the Blue Moon. His time as the Blue Moon was filled with constant danger and intense training. He fought many enemies, even when hurt, never once caring about his own safety. For many years, the man had completed dangerous missions that helped him prepare to face the Black Things. After all that hard work, he finally received a special instruction. A directive just for him. Someone received a new directive, which seemed quite random, making the cat-eared girl exclaim, "This is so random. What on earth is this?" The man held the letter. The directive instructed him to check a gift immediately at a small inn in southern Caliburn. The person arrived at the mysterious location mentioned in the directive and stepped toward the door, wondering what could possibly be hidden in such a place. The character looked off into the distance, lost in thought, surprised by the unexpected contents of this random directive letter. He couldn't help but wonder what unknown task awaited him now. The man rushed forward, leaving the girl behind. The Great Moon's gift was indeed special, something more precious than anything else. It led him to the family he thought he had lost forever, a true treasure. A hand reached out into a gentle, shimmering light, surrounded by golden, crystalline shapes. It was as if something precious, long thought lost, was finally within reach. The two people embraced tightly on the ground, their cloaks wrapped around them as if finding long-lost comfort. It was a deeply emotional reunion, as precious family members they thought were gone forever had finally returned. The seemingly random directive led him to an unexpected discovery. There, he found the family he had long thought was lost, a truly precious gift. The lost family, once thought gone, was indeed found. The girl looked up with wide eyes, her expression filled with relief and shock. The man held her tight, crying out in overwhelming emotion as he finally reunited with the family he believed was lost forever. A man was deeply saddened, thinking his younger sister had died. But then, he saw his sister, Silly, alive right in front of him. He couldn't understand how she survived and what had happened since they were separated. Silly gently took his hand, ready to tell her story. They sat at a table, and Silly began to explain what she had been through. She told him that after being pulled away from him by those strange creatures, her life became very hard. For a long time, she was held in a dark, scary place, waiting for what seemed like her end. When it was almost her time to be killed, something unexpected happened. A mysterious cloaked person appeared, fighting off the dark figures with powerful light. Bright energy burst forth, pushing back the evil. The light was so strong and bright, someone reached out and grabbed her, saving her from danger. Silly survived thanks to that light, but years later she found herself in trouble again, about to be sold. Dark magic once again surrounded her, trying to pull her down. She was trapped in the shadowy currents. Suddenly, streaks of white light appeared, cutting through the shadows. A man with a sword faced the dark tendrils. He swung his blade with great skill, pushing back the darkness. It was a mercenary named Evan who saved her that day. After that, Evan made sure she was taken care of, providing her with medicine and support. He showed a card from Milan Palladio promising her continued safety and even mentioning her brother, which made her deeply grateful. Silly wondered about this Milan Palladio, who used his own name to protect her. Her brother, who was listening, was very surprised, wondering how this great moon knew about them. He remembered he never talked about me and my family, and Utia only knew that I had been harmed by the black goat. He realized that that person knows everything. A shocking memory of a woman with red eyes flashed in his mind. All his confusing thoughts started to connect like a puzzle and disappear. He couldn't understand Utia's anxiety. He had thought a sword shouldn't think on its own, right? But the foolish one was me. He recalled the cloaked figure's words, promising him good things. Now that I think about it, those words were already knowing everything, hinting to the child who would survive alone. He realized that the words were hinting at his own survival, knowing he would be alone. Silly looked at her brother, asking if the sword truly acted on its own. Big brother? He gently patted her head, believing the sword's strange actions were simply overlooked by someone kind. He remembered his past self, holding the glowing sword full of determination. For me, who only chewed on revenge and hatred against the black goat, everything had changed. Silly smiled brightly as she brought food to her brother. Her survival and the thought of his family being safe was the most precious gift of all. You'll understand too. He understood why I followed that person. He planned to head to Caliburn and become a knight. It wasn't blind faith. I must repay that person. His eyes shone with a fierce resolve as he thought of his mission. My mission is to become a master knight, the pinnacle of Caliburn. A voice called out, telling the captain that it was time to leave. Standing by a window, the captain, now in full armor, looked at the moonlit sky. Below him, many knights stood ready in a grand hall. The captain declared that this expedition will become the foundation for the eclipse. Any hardship is fine. I look forward to the day when I can convey my gratitude along with repayment that will satisfy that person. With his sword raised, he stood under the eclipse, ready for battle. His mission was clear. Prove yourself under the moon. And so, the Eclipse Knight Order embarked on an expedition for battle against the barbarians in the snowy lands. They marched across the vast frozen landscape. Later, he found a moment of peace, relaxing outside a building with many papers. He wondered if this calm was because I've raised all the kids tilde. How peaceful. Suddenly, a gust of wind scattered his important papers, making him jump up in a panic. Oh no, they're all flying away. He bent down to pick them up, complaining about his messy notes. After visiting the labyrinth, I focused on studying incantations. Research results organized. He learned that refraction strengthens the incompleteness of completed magic, spreading the range. Repulsion crushes the form of launched projectiles transition. This incantation created a powerful outward burst of energy. The blue light incantation strengthens magic performed in parallel, like lightning. This allowed him to create a massive spear of electric power. Finally, diffraction linear grants penetration. In other words, a critical hit. This made his attacks incredibly strong, able to cut through anything. He realized there were important rules for incantations. Magic fails if broken, things that don't match can't repeat the same, and only up to 4 possible. Babylonia's incantations and hand seals are supposed to be forgotten, so there was no information. Even the places where they're written have no explanations. Because he could only use magic once a day, it took him a long time to understand these rules, especially since information on ancient incantations was so rare. Through his extensive research, he grew interested in developing magic specifically for self-defense. Now, shall I see the results of 2 months of experimentation? He brought his hands together, and lightning sparked between them. The lightning flowed around him in powerful, unpredictable currents. He aimed to create lightning by removing the central point of a manosphere, making it unstable. What usually seemed like weak magic now had a different feel. The lightning expanded into a massive, bright area around him. He used compression to gather the lightning, making it denser. As he chanted the incantations, the magic intensified. Then, with collapse, the energy exploded outwards in jagged bolts. The air crackled and buzzed with the overwhelming electrical discharge. This once useless magic was slowly gaining purpose and power. It reached its peak, a momentary full bloom. He extended his hand, channeling the vibrant blue lightning. The intense electricity flowed from his fingertips. A massive wave of energy burst forth. The bright, roaring lightning filled the entire area. Bolts of energy pulsed and spread. The electric current covered a vast space. The lightning shaped itself into a powerful striking form. It grew larger, reaching towards the sky. He stood watching the incredible lightning tree he had created, a testament to his new abilities. He observed his powerful new magic still forming. He realized the order of incantations was crucial, remembering how it failed when he used collapse first. Suddenly, his eyes widened in shock. unable to believe what he was seeing. This is impossible. Two people were standing in the distance, amazed by his magic. The older man was clutching his chest in disbelief, while the woman looked utterly stunned. Origin, you say? He was confused and shocked to see Kalia among the observers. What? Why is Kalia here? The old man exclaimed that the unique magic origin is the realm of a seventh circle mage. He looked confused, questioning if his magic was truly origin. He could barely believe that he had achieved such a high level of magic. Me? The old man was overjoyed, declaring that such a talented mage now belonged to him, as the man secretly thought about the person he was doing this for. Guests were seated in the grand reception room of the Palatial Count family. A woman with long red hair, Lady Zenonia, had come there with two clear goals in mind. She wanted to know who held the power that could greatly harm Zenonia's family. First, she aimed to understand Count Palatial's plans, as he held a powerful card against her. And, she needed to secretly check the strength of the magic that kept him safe. She remembered powerful people, even a whole organization, protecting him. But what she found out there was far more surprising than she ever expected. She was shocked to see a very proud mage shaking with fear, which was something she had never witnessed before. This mage was Bianco, a skilled fifth circle mage who had been expelled from the magic tower for doing inhumane experiments. He was a powerhouse who easily handled a soldier brigade. He also maintained an arrogant attitude even towards Zenonia, who had supported him for a long time. Now, he was clearly terrified, a sight Zenonia had never seen from him before. This made her wonder if the magic used was truly origin, a legendary and dangerous type of magic. Zenonia looked at the Count, trying to understand the situation. Just then, the Count himself, a man with dark hair, entered the room with a calm presence. He looked directly at Zenonia and asked, "What brings you to the Count's family?" Zenonia quickly apologized for her sudden visit. She explained that she was just wandering nearby and wished to meet the Count, and he replied that he wouldn't blame her for such a visit. However, he then stated that he wanted to make something very clear to her. He leaned forward, insisting that the magic he had used was definitely not origin. He calmly explained that if he had to rank his magic, it was only about second circle power, adding that the mage Bianco must have realized this magic had no real use and couldn't be used for fighting or attack. His words carried a hidden message, suggesting that it would be wise to keep quiet about what you saw. Bianco, still stunned, agreed, saying, "Yes, I must have seen wrong." Zenonia was surprised to hear Bianco, known for his pride, speaking so respectfully and formally, saying, "Even Bianco using formal speech." Count Palacio looked at them, a slight smile on his face, thinking, "Phew, that's a relief." Zenonia, now more relaxed, asked what the real reason for her visit was. After clearing the confusion, she said she had just finished some business nearby and came to greet you, Count. The Count asked if she had any specific matters to discuss, and she replied that she did not. He then politely stated that he had work to do and could not have a long chat, saying, "Thank you for taking the time, partner," and implying he needed to end the conversation. Zenonia understood and thanked him for his time, preparing to leave. As she was about to go, the Count suggested something to her. He said if she ever needed a conversation partner, visiting Duke Altia might be a good idea. Zenonia seemed a bit surprised by the suggestion, but agreed, saying, "Since you say so, I'll visit the Duke once." Outside the Grand Mansion, a carriage waited under a clear sky. As the carriage drove away, the men who saw her off wondered, why did that hopeless Western family come to visit? One of them said he had no idea, finding the whole thing annoying. The Count thought that if a false rumor spreads that I use origin, power-hungry fools will pick fights, because this place's genre is dark fantasy. He looked at his aide, asking if he understood the potential troubles. The aide noted that there's no way Zenonia, who's competing with Altia in the underworld, would actually visit the Duke. The Count, however, simply told him, "Anyway, don't just come to me." Meanwhile, Zenonia in her carriage was still thinking about Count Palladio's magic. She wondered if his magic was truly origin, despite what he had said, remembering the Count looking down on her. Back at the mansion, Bianca was talking to a cloaked figure, confirming that Palacio's magic was "it's not origin." The figure then asked why Bianca had reacted with such fear earlier if it wasn't origin, explaining, "Origin is magic that draws unique laws on the canvas of absolute unchanging principles." He explained that such advanced magic was only permitted to supreme mages. However, Bianco's expression changed as he remembered the Count's different kind of magic. He had seen it using an observation lens at your request. He had seen it using an observation lens as requested, and it wasn't just drawing on the canvas, it was tearing it. His mind showed a vision of the Count standing within a fiery, torn space. He saw the Count twisting and fixing lightning itself. Bianca was seen screaming as he explained that the Count was twisting and collapsing laws, and yet the magic manifests. The light of the magic was intensely blue and white, almost tearing the fabric of reality. Blue and white magical energy crackled around the Count. Bianco concluded that it was an impossible miracle that shouldn't be possible, and behind that incredible magic, he sensed something ancient. Zenonia looked horrified at Bianco, who was radiating blue light from his eyes. The magical energy pulsed and fractured, revealing a deeper, darker essence beneath. A giant red eye formed in his mind, with the Count's figure standing below it. He recognized it instantly as the power of the Forgotten Great Lords. The realization caused Bianco immense pain. Clutching his head, he forced himself to stop thinking about it, fearing the danger of knowing too much. He remembered his past, crying, He had once sought ancient knowledge enough to be praised for research on magic of the Forgotten Age. Because of this, he now firmly asserted, "So I assert, don't cross or oppose Count Palladio." Zenobia smirked, realizing that thinking about the Count's real plans was useless, saying, it's meaningless to try to figure out his intentions. She remembered the Count's subtle suggestion to visit Duke Altea, which appeared as a bright blue circle in her mind. The Count, playing with dice, looked down on Zenobia, making her realize that she had already become one of his pawns. Her face reflected a mix of understanding and a slight unease. 5 months later, and 2 years had passed since the children had gone their separate ways. The mansion stood peacefully under the sun. The aide, Evan, entered the room. Evan approached the Count and said, Evan. Evan reported, standing tall before the seated Count. They say the Zenobia Count family and Altea Duke family formed an alliance. The Count was shocked that the two main powers of the underworld had joined together, even if it was a hidden agreement not visible to the public, exclaiming, "What? I raised the sin so well, and now a mastermind alliance? Will Asteria Kingdom fall?" He worried if this mastermind alliance meant the Asteria Kingdom would fall. Realizing they had actually taken his casual suggestion seriously, he remembered telling Zenobia that if you need a conversation partner, it might be good to visit Duke Altea. He wondered if it was just a temporary alliance, given Kalia's famously cold and proud personality, while Zenobia stood nearby. Still, he thought he should at least prepare something, maybe a letter, as Evan seemed unconcerned by the potential temporary alliance. He started to write a letter to Kalia, trying to soften his words and apologize if he had seemed blunt or cold, wondering if his apology looked like a bad excuse. He then asked Evan to take care of delivering it, saying, "Evan, please take care of it." Evan replied that he would deliver the letter to Lady Zenobia through the Mercenary Guild and would continue looking into the children's news. The Count tapped the letter, a thoughtful expression on his face. He wondered what Radon and Seo Long were up to, as Utia's letters mentioned their mysterious whereabouts since arriving at their destination, worrying if Seo Long was still alive. He recalled that if she found the gift following the letter, she could become the pinnacle of warriors, even a Baba Yaga. He remembered the item description clearly stated that if the sin of pride obtained it, she wouldn't become corrupted into a sin, but would become a great lion person, confirming it was definitely written in the item description. He knew that he told her about hidden treasures to use as funds, hoping that with her talent she would at least be able to survive. He knew the place she went was a nation of warriors where you can conquer the world with strength. This land was the desert nation, colony. Under a vast, starry sky, rugged desert mountains stood silently. A figure walked alone in the desolate landscape inside a cave, muttering, "Phew." She sighed in relief, shouting that the trials are finally over. Tilda. It was Seo Lang, a young woman with lion features, celebrating her success. She raised her golden armored hand, shouting, "Great Moon! Thank you for the gift." Seo Lang was radiating power, her eyes gleaming with determination. She giggled, surprised that the essence of the Golden Mane tribe was not just a legend, as she had thought. She realized that what she had heard as a child were not just old stories or fairy tales. In a grand hall, surrounded by other lion-like people, she heard about the essence of the Golden Mane tribe. One of the elders explained that they, the lion people, were descendants of the Golden Mane tribe, the king of all beast folk. The essence of the Golden Mane tribe was a legendary item passed down for hundreds of years. It grants us power and authority. Seo Lang, now clad in golden armor, stood with newfound power, having obtained the essence. She had passed all the tests and trials of the inner world. Golden energy swirled around her, a testament to her transformation. It was all real. What was clear to Seo Lang was that the Great Moon was her benefactor. Her golden hair flowed as she resolved her purpose. The Great Moon had saved her when she was dying from human experiments. So she knew she had to repay this debt, and she remembered the power to get revenge for her parents against the Black Dragon. She stood empowered, strong energy pulsing around her as she prepared. She stood empowered, ready for her mission. She understood that the Great Moon's true goal for her was not just to become an ordinary gladiator. With her golden clawed hand, she was ready to face anything. What I must do is become the strongest gladiator and gather the scattered Golden Mane tribe to revive them. And with this strength, she channeled immense power upwards. With that, strike down the Black Dragon. Standing alone in the desert under a bright blue moon, everything is for that person. She looked up, a fierce determination in her eyes, declaring that it's time to begin. Her gaze focused on the luminous blue moon above. A prophecy stated that the great beast folk and king of beast folk, the Golden Mane tribe, shall be resurrected under the blue moon after 500 years. The main character, a young man, reflected on some recent news he had heard. His companion then mentioned that the Information Guild had picked up rumors related to the kids they were looking after. He had meant to tell him earlier but forgot. The young man asked, "Oh, what kind of rumors?" He learned that Seo Lang was doing very well in Colony and had even earned the nickname Golden Flash. Her power shimmered around her. The young man smiled slightly, finding the nickname strangely familiar. He agreed that it was a place where strength allowed one to do anything. His companion then mentioned that he hadn't heard anything about Radon since she went to Loxus to learn the ropes. The companion added that there was some information about Radon, but he was still checking how true it was. Then he noticed the young man staring at him intently, prompting him to ask if he was busy. The young man explained that he had finished all his tasks. The companion was shocked. asking about the magic tower as he had never heard of it before. The young man clarified that they were going to the Blue Tower, which was much farther, near Labyrinth City. The companion realized this and accepted it. The companion sighed, saying he was used to the young man forgetting things, but a month seemed too long when the Green Tower only took a week to reach. The young man slumped back, already tired at the thought of a month-long carriage ride. He knew he had to go because of a special item located there. Labyrinth City brought back many memories for him. He smiled slightly, remembering how he used to grind for levels there. The labyrinth in the city was one of the main leveling maps, and the deeper you went while leveling, the better items you could get. Countless players went in and out of the labyrinth, but no one ever reached the end. Some players even tried cheating and broke through to floor 150, but the crazy developers kept making new maps below, just to watch players struggle. Just like in the game, relics and artifacts keep being discovered from that endless labyrinth. So officially certified magic appraisers are highly sought-after specialists who can live in comfort. Ryan said she would be taking the appraiser exam soon, and with that kid's talent, she'll pass with room to spare. The young man leaned back thinking, it's just an item that helps with equipment appraisal. He decided that if her gift wasn't enough, he would give her extra support separately. They were now in Labyrinth City. The city was a tall, impressive place named Lartania, with a grand clock tower reaching high. Lartania was a unique city, known for being a city under no one's rule, a city of explorers and mercenaries. Past countless shops tucked away in the southern corner was a special place. There is a secretive appraisal shop called Merd. Merd was quietly gaining fame for its unique services, and most of its customers were nobles and A-rank explorers, among whom is even the Lord of Lartania himself, who was seen smiling as he got an appraisal finished. A female appraiser confirmed to a grateful customer that she had appraised his item, a device that made flames using mana. The customer was excited to learn it was a relic that can take an engraving. He then asked about the engraved effect. As expected, the customer said happily, noting that the item's power had improved greatly, allowing the flames to last for an hour with just a tiny bit of mana. He thanked the appraiser, feeling deeply in her debt. The appraiser looked down at her hands, then at another item, a small mask. She confirmed that this new item could also be engraved. The reason this hidden shop was so famous was because of its special engravings. These engravings are gifts from the Great Moon. The appraiser smiled, thinking about how she had to become an appraiser. She then picked up a telescope looking at it. She looked out the window, seeing her own figure outside. The engravings are gifts from the Great Moon, showing a count of 247 out of 500 with a swirling symbol. She smiled, thinking about how she had to become an appraiser. At first, she didn't understand why, especially since that person is Paleon's friend, a figure from the era of the forgotten foreign legend. She did understand that everything was to deal with the black things, but the directive to go to Labyrinth City Lartania and become a magic appraiser just didn't seem to connect. She wondered what being an appraiser had to do with killing the black things. However, she understood when she saw the gift. A glowing item rested on a pedestal in a dark room as she entered. The gift aids appraisal by quickly identifying items below a certain mana threshold. Below it, an eye-like symbol was bound by red chains. No, this is somehow different from what she knew. As the chains around the eye began to break, its true nature didn't even exist in the library of knowledge. More chains broke, releasing energy. The chains shattered completely, releasing a burst of light. The eye, now free, was revealed as a golden star-studded circle with a single sharp eye showing a count of 0/500. When she broke the seals, the engraving power was unlocked. She realized that to gain the power to fight the black things, this must be awakened. The chain shattered, and the golden eye now showed 248/500. The young woman bowed her head, holding a glowing vial, as golden particles streamed from it, feeding power into the golden eye. She noted with a confident smile that another 252 offerings were needed until full awakening. She understood that by raising a relic's stats, the eye absorbed something and fundamentally changed. However, it only reacts to specific high-class relics, and if it's not one, the stored power disappears. Precisely appraising everything and picking out worthy high-level offerings to engrave is a task only for someone who was born with the eternal library. She held the golden eye, smiling, knowing that everything she did was to kill the Black Wolf. In other words, something only I can do. Everything is to kill the Black Wolf. She held the object, knowing that all of her actions were guided by the Great Moon's will. All according to the Great Moon's will. 3 weeks later, a carriage arrived at the magnificent Blue Tower, a grand structure with many turrets. Inside, a blue-haired woman with a serious expression declared that the tower master was absent and advised visitors to just state your business and leave. This was Fenia Chrysine, the Blue Tower's vice master and a Sixth Circle mage. She impatiently told the visitors, including the young man and his companion, that she was busy, so make it quick. The young man quietly observed her. He recognized her as a genius from the game's main story, who would rise to become the Tower Master in her early 20s, reaching the Eighth Circle. The Magic Tower had great power beyond just combat. It monopolizes the production of certain essentials, so its standing is equal to that of nobles. Despite all that, the young man felt a slight unease. He calmly introduced himself as Count Palacio. He explained that, as mentioned in his message, he was there about the time gate. The young man calmly held his tie, feeling a slight unease. He stated confidently that he could get rid of the time gate. He turned a page of a book. He explained that a time gate was a rift connected to an unknown extra-dimensional space created where a lot of magic is used, causing anomalies and tremendous damage. Terrifying dragon-like creatures emerged from the time gate's dark rift, causing destruction. A white dragon head appeared in the purple void. Fenia looked at him with a disdainful gaze, her magical eye glowing. What he thought he could do with his small talent, and the young man and his companion were surprised by her rudeness. Fenia grew angry. She yelled mockingly, "Yeah, right." She then sternly asked if he knew how many people came here saying that, huh? The young man quietly wondered why she couldn't just believe what people say. Seriously, that personality, he silently wished she would just listen. She told him, listen. She explained that she understood that now that it's becoming public that some trash got lucky and became a count, you want a big move to flip public opinion. Fenia unleashed a powerful magical aura. But you can't throw that tantrum here, can you? The young man and his companion stood against the overwhelming magical pressure. He realized that the rumors about him living quietly weren't even wrong. He muttered in frustration. Good grief. Fenia's magical power crackled around her, making her appear very strong and menacing. His companion felt scared by her power. The young man internally wondered if he would be folded in half if he tried to act up with so little magic power alone. However, he was desperate. He declared that if he cannot get rid of the newspaper's effects, he will transfer all his assets. Fenia still thought he was talking nonsense, saying, still talking nonsense. He offered to swear an oath if she needed it. The young man stood firm, looking determined. Fenia paused, thinking that for borrowing her time a bit, that's not such a bad condition. She paused, thinking. She then agreed and showed him the way to the time gate, reminding him of his promise. If you fail, the entire Count family's fortune is mine. He confidently replied, that won't happen. As they walked, Fenia wondered if he were the mastermind of the Count family or just some lucky guy who got the title by coincidence. Seeing you walk in here without knowing your place, it seems closer to the latter. Despite her inhuman aura, he has a tiny mana hole and slightly above average sensing. Barely at the end of second circle talent. She looked down at him, thinking how pathetic he was, and what does he think he can do with that? She explained that there's no real need for me to step in and close the time gate. In 3 months, it'll spit out its relic and naturally vanish. So research was stopped, and no mage has ever closed a time gate. However, the time gate in the Blue Tower had been causing problems for over 2 years now, which was highly unusual. They stood before the time gate, a glowing rift in the ground that was cracking the floor. Fenia warned him that if he wasn't going to do anything, he should just leave. He started to use his hands as a channel for magic, instead of a staff, which surprised Fenia. She found it unbelievable, saying that even ancient magic books called such a method primitive, like a forgotten legend. She told him to stop copying strange things and step aside. Suddenly, a strange force erupted, cracking the ground. The area plunged into darkness, the ground cracking around them. Fenia realized her body wouldn't move, stuck in place. She realized that everything around them had stopped, and her magical eye began to glow in confusion. A massive, terrifying red eye appeared above them. Red energy surged and sparked around the area, as cracks spread across the ground, filled with dark red energy. The young man stood calmly as a giant, dark red eye, filled with intricate patterns, materialized in the sky above him. A large, terrifying red glyph appeared in the overwhelming red atmosphere. The giant red eye stared down, its immense power causing Fenia to look up in shock. The ground beneath them continued to crack and glow with red light as the powerful aura filled the space. 2 figures stood on a cracked, illuminated platform in a vast, dark space. Surrounded by mysterious floating lights, a strange, dark energy sparked and cracked around the figures, hinting at a powerful magic at play. One of them, a woman, felt her body completely freeze, unable to move at all. She realized everything had stopped for her, as an instinctive observation plan activated, showing a blue glowing pattern. Her eyes began to glow with a dark, intense power, reflecting the strange energy. A close-up of her eyes showed it burning red, focused and alert amid the swirling red aura. She stood rigid, surrounded by a fierce red light, as if under an irresistible command. Blue magical lines and circles appeared, trying to grasp the essence of that which cannot be understood. The woman then realized that what she was seeing was simple, yet also forbidden knowledge. She felt a sharp pain, realizing this knowledge was forbidden, something no one should ever think about. Her thoughts raced, desperately trying to stop herself from comprehending what she was seeing. She knew that nothing must be done, but she felt a sharp pain, realizing this knowledge was forbidden, something no one should ever think about. She thought of a chalice of poison, already a star, or a doom-marked, ruin-ordained grail, that one. Red chains of light wrapped around her, pulling her into an intense, painful state. Her entire body glowed red, caught in the grip of a powerful, unseen force. The man watched as the magic enforced absolute silence on her, overwhelming her with its power. Sweat beaded on her face as she struggled, finally understanding what was demanded of her. Her eye glowed bright red as she finally gave in to the powerful demand, murmuring, "The demand is understood." The red energy surged around her one last time before starting to fade. The fierce red glow around her body slowly turned into a soft, fading blue light. The magical patterns around her settled into a calm, intricate blue design, showing the forbidden thoughts had been pushed away. In the cleared space, the danger now gone, leaving a sense of calm. The chapter began announcing that the time gate had been successfully closed. The man explained that closing the time gate was quite easy for him. He revealed that he simply needed the right item and method, and he intended to take the special relic the gate had revealed. He had made it look like a fancy spell, as he might need to use this trick again, and wondered if the woman Fenia believed his show. Fenia looked genuinely scared, promising repeatedly that she wouldn't do anything or say a word. The man watched her terrified expression, thinking, "That face? So the bluff failed?" She replied, "Why, yes, of course. I won't do anything." Fenia then desperately insisted, "Yes, I will absolutely keep my mouth shut. I won't tell anyone." She continued, "I may not look it, but I'm very tight-lipped." The man looked puzzled by her strange reaction. He decided it was time to leave with his assistant Evan, saying, "Evan, let's head back." But Fenia quickly called out, Please," wondering what she meant. She then revealed a box filled with mana recovery potions, proudly saying she made them herself. She urged him to accept one, explaining, "A mana potion handcrafted by the vice master of the tower." The man took the potion, surprised to learn it was top grade, exclaiming, "And it's top grade on top of that?" He hesitated, clearly taken aback. Fenia then misunderstood his hesitation, thinking he wanted her to swear an oath to keep quiet, just as she thought he had implied earlier. She eagerly offered to swear a mana oath to prove her loyalty, asking, "Shall I swear by my mana?" Shocking the man. He tried to stop her, realizing there was a big misunderstanding happening, saying, "I think you're misunderstanding something." But it was too late. Bright blue chains of mana erupted around them, signifying an oath being made. The blue chains bound him too, as Fenia began her oath. Fenia, now bound by the magic chains, declared that she kept her promises, insisting he had seen her do it. The man just sighed, admitting, "Got it. There's not even a hint this misunderstanding will clear up." And so, for unknown reasons, the blue tower was bound by an oath, and he left with 5 powerful potions and the relic he wanted. Back outside, his assistant asked about the relic from the time gate, noting it looked quite plain for something obtained with so much effort. The assistant then asked if the relic was powerful, to which he replied it was hard to say. He added that, regardless, it was something he absolutely needed, pleased he managed to get the Mark of the Unjust in one piece. He explained that the gem set in the bracelet absorbs mana from the air and stores it for later use, working like a charm. Though its capacity wasn't huge, it easily beats his mana hole. He sighed, thinking, what kind of body has less mana than a support item? Then again, he reminded himself that his goal is researching magic and protecting himself, not fighting on the front lines. He couldn't help but wonder what Fenia had misunderstood to make her act so strangely. It's enough. He decided it didn't really matter since he probably wouldn't have to deal with any of them again. Her sudden politeness was seriously suspicious. As he left, Fenia called out, "Please come again," and confidently declared that he looked exactly like a second circle mage. He gave a small, resigned smile, thinking, right. He reflected on how her reaction was almost identical to Kalia's last time, which leaves a bad aftertaste. Fenia, still smiling awkwardly, felt a strange unease from the interaction. He decided it didn't really matter, since he probably wouldn't have to deal with any of them again, and calmly enjoyed the carriage ride. He found the journey very peaceful, enjoying the serene view from his elegant carriage. The serene sky hinted at a change of scenery. The scene shifted to the Grand Altia Ducal Estate, where a woman was being welcomed after a long time. Duke Altia, a woman with long brown hair, held a teacup gracefully welcoming her guest. Lady Zenonia, with striking red hair, smiled, saying, "Indeed, Altia is as formidable as ever." She expressed her pleasure in their meeting, noting, "It's convenient that, between the two of us, rank and power don't need to be measured." Lady Zenonia praised Count Palacio's judgment in people, remembering his suggestion, it might be good to visit Duke Altia. By heeding those words, the true meaning quickly became clear to her. As we talked later that evening, under the moonlit sky, they shared their thoughts. They realized they were both in similar situations. They were both acting under the Count's orders, setting aside their own reasons and understanding. The powerful emblem of a mysterious group was shown, hinting at a larger power struggle and the Count's absolute control. They found a comfortable relationship, knowing they were both pawns in a bigger game. Duke Altia asked Lady Zenonia what brought her there today, since the formal summit was still a month away. Lady Zenonia explained that the Count had sent a letter, using her visit as an excuse, and they wondered what secrets it held. The letter, addressed to Lady Zenonia, mentioned, "A few nobles have grumbled to me as well." Although it seemed like a simple apology letter, they both felt there was some directive hidden in it. They agreed it would be best to examine the letter together, sensing a hidden message. Lady Zenonia noted that the Count had said, "Not many nobles suit me," and recalled Baron Kenya belonging to the aristocrat faction and Marquis Milan being one of the key royalists. She also recalled Viscount Belanda in the royalist camp, and Duke Faldion, a key figure among the aristocrats. Those were the nobles he conversed with at the ball. In short, if the Count was not pleased with either the aristocrat faction or the royalists, the two women exchanged a worried glance, wondering if he intended to eliminate them all. They concluded that the most logical explanation was that he had a bigger, more ruthless plan that stays within common sense. They both agreed on this grim conclusion. They realized he intends to sweep away the existing nobility and build a new regime. One of the women gasped, realizing the true scope of his ambition, noting, "With the Western hegemon on his side, that must be it." There was no doubt about what this all meant. They understood that this was exactly what his complex schemes were leading to. They decided it was time to discuss their own plan of action against this looming threat, asking, "Shall we discuss the plan?" Meanwhile, at the Blue Tower, the Tower Master heard about Count Palacio closing the time gate. The Grand Blue Tower stood tall as the Tower Master received the news, asking the Vice Master to tell him everything in detail, while she looked exhausted at her desk. And so, unknown to many, all the pieces of a much larger plan were moving and falling into place on their own. Elsewhere, a person suddenly choked on food, and another asked, "Are you all right?" The person explained that a roasted sweet potato had gotten stuck in their throat, adding, "It suddenly must be the roasted sweet potato, though." Someone kindly offered them water, which they gratefully accepted. The choking person sighed, wishing they could just go home. They also thought about how it was almost time for Utia's letter to arrive. The scene then shifted to a grand, almost ethereal building under a night sky, with bells softly chiming. A woman in a flowing white dress slowly walked down a bright path, her presence radiating serenity. She smiled gently, her long white hair falling around her, suggesting a kind and calm demeanor. This nun, with soft red eyes and a sweet smile, seemed to hold a quiet power. Her white gown moved gracefully, surrounded by sparkling particles and white lilies. A possessed person's little tip explained that the all-seeing eye talent, vital for high-ranking mages, is either natural or awakens around the sixth circle. The person who had it was born with it, a rare trait for a sixth circle mage. The tip noted the difference in perceived strength levels, showing the man was late fifth circle. The man in the image, apparently surprised, exclaimed, "Somehow it's done." The powerful Blue Tower Master, Salem Micardo, finally came back. He looked around, confused, because he couldn't feel the presence of the special time gate anymore. His disciple Fenia greeted him, looking very tired, and told him she had finished all the tasks he gave her. Salem was shocked by her calm greeting, as Fenia usually showed a lot of anger and arrogance. He wondered why she was acting so differently now, looking puzzled by her changed behavior. He remembered how Fenia, as a young vice master, was full of pride and arrogance due to her great talent. She often made new mages cry, but Salem never tried to change her because she was very serious about magic. He always believed she would naturally become humble once she reached the seventh circle of magic and realized how much more there was to learn. So her current quiet state was very strange to him, especially after his long trip. He looked at her, slumped at her desk, wondering if her work had been too difficult. Fenia looked upset and nervous, her eyes downcast. She then explained that the Count had closed the time gate, but she couldn't say how, because she had made a promise. Fenia firmly stated that she couldn't give any more details about it. Salem was very surprised, thinking that something truly powerful, perhaps even magic from origin, must have broken Fenia's arrogance. He gently patted her head, noticing how sad she was, not even bothering to push his hand away. Salem found this Count Palacio of the Asteria Kingdom to be very interesting indeed. This marked the beginning of a new part of the story. Chapter 14. The scene then changed to a different place, showing signs of destruction under a bright sky. 1 month had passed since the Count's return from the Blue Tower, and he felt a good change in himself. After getting the Unrighteous One's engraving, he was learning spells much faster and could use more magic each day. He also found a new rule about magic. Using similar spells in a row can make them stronger. The Count wondered if this new rule was about how to arrange spells, as Evan, his assistant, approached him. Evan told the Count that his magic seemed to be getting stronger every time he saw it. Evan added that the Count's magic felt much more powerful than it did just a few months ago. He pointed to a large hole in the ground, saying that the Count's gravity magic now caused damage that would have been impossible otherwise. The Count knew his second circle gravity magic couldn't usually crush someone to death, but he did feel stronger himself. He wondered if he was imagining it, even though Evan also noticed his growing power. He thought the reason might not be just skill or incantations. The Count knew that better skill made magic more exact, and incantations changed what a spell did. He had been trying different spell methods. For months, he had been trying out different ways to say his gravity spells, even using almost the same words twice in a row. But his tests only showed a tiny bit more power when the spell arrangement was perfect, making him think his current extra strength was just him feeling well lately. Evan then brought the Count a letter from Utia, and the Count decided to go inside to read it quietly. Evan asked if he was going in so soon, and the Count replied that he had already used all 3 of his daily spells. The Count pondered what could be making his magic suddenly stronger, wondering if it was some kind of curse compensation. He thought about an old Eastern ritual where a person who was cursed could get power back by sacrificing something. He quickly dismissed the idea, as there was no one from the East around him, and he also doubted it was about receiving faith from others. He briefly considered if his status as a Count from a small kingdom being ignored by powerful figures was somehow related. He decided these ideas were silly and thought it was sometimes better to just ignore things that don't make sense. As he and Evan walked, the Count concluded that there was no harm in conveniently ignoring the strange changes in his magic for now. The story then moved to the Holy Kingdom Rosario, specifically its capital city, Lionel, lit by a beautiful moon. This city was known as the Pure White City, dedicated to Chironia, the goddess of the moon and peace. Inside an Eastern prayer house, a nun stood in a grand, sparkling hall. A knight, Sir Roke, approached and respectfully greeted the nun. Above the city, the moon shone brightly in the night sky. The nun, Udia Bloodia, smiled back at Sir Roke as she returned his greeting. Sir Roke, a holy knight, politely asked the nun if she was well, showing great respect despite her being a lower-ranked nun. Even though she held less power, Sir Roke always showed her deep respect. He then shared that he had successfully saved 8 children and 25 adults in the villages during his recent travels. Sir Roke humbly credited all his good deeds to the nun's guidance. The nun replied that he was the one who did the good work, reminding him that she only offered teachings to him when he was nothing. Sir Roke expressed his constant gratitude, remembering how for 20 years he couldn't even feel divine power. He couldn't forget that day when he was in despair, ready to give up completely. A younger Sir Roke sat on the ground, defeated when the nun approached him. She told him that if he truly wanted something, he should try believing in the moon. The nun, standing under the bright crescent moon, offered this mysterious advice with a small smile. Young Sir Roke looked confused, wondering about the moon. The nun assured him that if he believed, he would eventually understand. She asked him what he couldn't achieve if he was truly earnest, and following her words, he prayed to the moon for several days. Suddenly, a bright golden light surrounded him as he held his sword, showing a new power. He was overjoyed because miraculously, he could now use divine power. However, the present Sir Roke looked troubled, worried that by believing in the moon instead of the goddess Sharonia, he might have given in to a momentary temptation. He questioned if he had ventured onto a heretical path. Yet, he saw that all divine power felt the same, and the sacred tools glowed brightly in his hands, just as they should. He held a shining rosary, which confirmed his ability to use divine power. Sir Roke then asked the nun why she had specifically told him to believe in the moon. The nun explained that faith comes from an unseen belief, but it takes a very long time to grow. She added that it is much easier to gain faith from something that physically exists. With a knowing look, she simply mentioned the moon. The nun explained that the moon is always with them, a constant presence. Sir Roke, understanding her point, agreed with her. The nun further explained that the goddess is also the moon, and this method helps people with doubts believe with more certainty. Sir Roke, finally understanding, addressed her gratefully. He bowed deeply to the nun, showing his sincere thanks. He truly thanked her for everything. The nun then asked if he wished to show his gratitude in another way. She invited him to pray together with her, standing beneath a grand moon symbol. Sir Roke agreed, saying he would, as he always had. The nun then observed that many people had already gathered, as it was prayer time. Sir Roke followed her into the large prayer hall, where many were already seated. The nun walked gracefully down the aisle towards the front of the hall. She stood before the grand glowing altar in the beautiful prayer house. She prepared to lead the gathered people in prayer. She addressed everyone, inviting them to begin their prayers. She raised her arms, ready to lead the service. She called upon everyone to pray to the great moon. As she spoke, she looked up towards the large moon-shaped stained glass window. This powerful nun was Utia Bloodia from the Holy Kingdom Rosario. Back in another land, a letter from Utia arrived for the Count, likely delivered by a mercenary guild, which usually places mail directly into home mailboxes. A man sits thoughtfully at his desk, bathed in the bright light streaming through a large window. He seems to be reflecting on something important. He holds a letter in his hand, feeling a bit disappointed because there's nothing special written in it. The letter only contains simple updates about everyone's daily lives, confirming that they are all doing well. While it's good that everyone is fine, he feels a little lonely because only Utia sends him letters regularly. He then tries to see things from the children's point of view, realizing they have never even seen his face. To them, he is likely just a kind uncle who showed them some kindness. He reminds himself that his main goal was to guide them to the right path so they wouldn't destroy the world. So there's no real reason to feel sad. He lets out a slight sigh, muttering, Right. A sense of calm washes over him, bringing an inner peace to his thoughts. He tries to convince himself that he is fine, even as a hidden sadness peeks through his composure, showing a tear streaking down one eye. Suddenly, a voice asks if he is busy, startling him so much that he nearly jumps out of his chair, shouting, Gah, you scared me. The messenger, slightly flustered, coughs and asks if the Count is still there. The messenger explains that new information about the children has arrived from the Information Guild, and he wanted to deliver it right away. The man, now composed, asks for an update on Radon, whom he had inquired about previously. The messenger drops a bomb. Radon has become a pirate. The man reacts with shock and demands to hear every single detail about Radon's unexpected career change, from start to finish. A letter is revealed, confirming the news directly from Radon herself. Uncle, I hope you're doing well. I've become a pirate. The messenger begins his detailed report, explaining that Seo Lang and Deus are currently the talk of the town. Seo Lang has already achieved an impressive 32 consecutive wins, needing 100 more to challenge the formidable Baba Yaga. The man is surprised by her winning streak and tries to recall who holds the current record for consecutive wins. He remembers that the powerful Lion King currently holds the top spot with 41 consecutive victories. An image shows a monstrous dark creature roaring with glowing red eyes. Beside the creature, a powerfully built warrior with white hair is shown mid-strike, surrounded by electrical energy. He wonders if this Lion King is the incredibly strong character who briefly joined as a companion in his game. He recalls that the colony relies heavily on skilled warriors for its military, being a place full of powerful individuals. He then realizes that Seal Lang might soon surpass the Lion King's impressive record. Next, the messenger continues, reporting that Deus's Night Order has successfully executed Kurga of the Snowfields, one of the feared 8 barbarian chieftains. A grand flag representing Deus's Night Order stands proudly in a snowy landscape, symbolizing their victory, as people cheer in the background. Deus, clad in dark armor, is seen standing in the vast snowy expanse, having clearly defeated the powerful chieftain. The messenger reminds him that these barbarians are fearsome monsters who transform into superhumans through dark rituals. The barbarian chieftain, fierce and powerful, with an axe, lets out a final roar. The man nods, remembering how in his game he even had to confront their god, Ultultus. He expresses relief, glad that he doesn't have to deal with Ultultus in this current reality. He notes that Ultultus only appears when the 5 great sins descend, so for now, he doesn't need to worry about Deus either. Deus's recent achievement is so significant that it places him on the same level as the legendary First Sword, Reinhardt, making the man consider if he should have met him personally for potential benefits. Next, the messenger shares news about Rein, who has become an appraiser and now stamps relics with special black engravings to enhance their abilities. Showing her mysterious appraisal shop, Murd, the man finds Rein's new ability and profession quite interesting and suitable for her. His thoughts quickly return to Radon, still truly bewildered by her choice to become a pirate. He asks the messenger again if Radon really became a pirate. The messenger confirms the news while looking serious. Apparently, Radon has become the captain ruling the largest first archipelago, a place known to be home to many powerful pirates. A strong, mysterious image of Radon as a pirate captain, with her sword, looms over the port city. This revelation completely floors the man. He exclaims, "That's impossible." The man reacts with extreme distress, nearly jumping out of his seat. He recalls an old internet post he once found funny, about a sponsored child becoming a pirate, and now it's his own reality. He hadn't sent her to Loxus for this. He rubs his temples, agonizing over the news, murmuring, "A pirate." He remembers that Radon's special skill, according to the lore, is detection, which should have led her to a different, less piratical path. Radon is shown gracefully moving underwater, emphasizing her natural ability and comfort in the sea. As a rare member of the sea god race, she is completely at home in the water, and the Laxus seas are brimming with valuable relics. The image shows Radon finding a glowing barrel underwater. Because of her unique talents and the environment, he had recommended she pursue the promising career of a treasure hunter. He even gave her a special gift specialized for detection. The messenger claps his hands, startling the Count, who responds with a simple, non-committal, Well, the man then asks how Radon, a new pirate, managed to defeat the formidable captain of the first archipelago. He recalls that all the captains of the 7 archipelagos are immensely powerful superhumans, and it's well known that the 7 archipelagos' pirates never lose in naval combat. He wonders if Radon relied on ancient relics to win, thinking perhaps she fished out only the best of the ancient era relics. He remembers spending countless hours on a mini-game called Treasure Hunter to acquire powerful gear himself. So in the end, she ate up the captain position with that insane item stats. The man covers his eyes with his hand, overwhelmed. He acknowledges that life rarely goes according to plan, but this time feels oddly bitter, like the heart of a dad who ended up with a pirate daughter. The messenger notices his distress, leaning over the desk to ask, "Count, are you all right?" The scene then shifts to the beautiful and bustling, massive maritime city Laxus, the heart of the Corsia Principality. Palm trees sway gently under a clear blue sky, overlooking sparkling azure waters, painting a picture of a tropical paradise. The narration reveals that just beyond these waters lie the pirates' 7 paradises. A close-up on the vibrant green palm fronds against the blue sky continues the tropical scene. Among these 7 paradises, the largest and most prominent is known as the first archipelago, shown under a soft, warm sunset sky. A vibrant port city, the first archipelago, is shown, complete with grand buildings and large ships docked along its shores. The focus narrows to the remnants of the battle. A broken sword lying on the wooden floor, where the one who dealt with the captain who ruled this place once stood. The broken sword belonged to the great pirate Red Slayer Alcrade, who received the Heavenly King's blessing through offerings. A sharp sound effect suggests a sudden, forceful exit or movement. The narration states that there is now a new captain commanding the first archipelago. The new captain is revealed to be Radon, looking confident with long white hair and a knowing smirk against the bright sky. Radon looks slightly contemplative, saying, as she pauses her actions. She admits that she just can't seem to figure it out, leaning back against the city backdrop. He wonders aloud, questioning the true nature and meaning of the Great Moon. She recalls that initially, she had no real interest and never thought deeply about it, perhaps thinking of him only as a grateful uncle at first. She remembers her dark past, confessing that she would have died as an experimental slave, but met Utia and even awakened her abilities. She confesses that her activities as part of the Blue Moon were mostly about following Utia, so when proper orders came directly from the Great Moon, she found them confusing. Holding a letter under the full moon, she thinks, This is an order I don't understand. She questions the purpose of being commanded to become a treasure hunter. Her expression darkens, fueled by an intense desire as she thinks, there are so many I need to get revenge on as quickly as possible. The scene shifts to a magnificent, luminous blue interior structure, possibly a grand hall or sanctuary. In the hall, figures in white robes are shown, including Radon walking away, stepping out of turbulent water. Radon walks away, leaving the turbulent water behind her. Her mind flashes to a time when her tribe was living peacefully on an island no one knew about. Dark, terrifying vision shows monstrous hands reaching for her. She sees herself floating helplessly as bodies fall into the dark water below. She recalls escaping to the continent, only to face more heartbreak there from those damn hunters. A shocking image shows one of her family members being fatally stabbed by a hunter. She remembers her exhausted parents were killed, and she herself was sold as a slave. The dark, visceral memory continues, marked by intense red and dark energy. Radon stands alone on a cliff overlooking a brightly lit port city at sunset. After escaping, she looks up, perhaps hearing the noise from the city. She hears loud cheering and celebratory noises coming from a ship, marked by fireworks exploding over the water. She turns her gaze toward the commotion, asking what all that noise is. Her eyes glow intensely as she notices wanted posters plastered in the background. The scene shows magical floating lights illuminating the celebration below. People are seen celebrating with great enthusiasm, drinking and laughing joyfully. Someone declares loudly that only select great pirates can receive the Heavenly King's blessing through their offerings. He shouts a rallying cry, "Eternal glory to the chosen captains of the 7 archipelagos." The focus shifts to the celebration itself, showing the lower half of people cheering. Radon's eyes glow intensely as she focuses on her true goal, finding those who murdered her parents. Her gaze sharpens intensely, glowing with blue energy. She realizes with anger that those bastards have finally obtained power. She understands that the talk of a heavenly king is nothing more than a false rumor they are deliberately spreading. The power they seek is obtained through dark rituals involving parts of the sea god race's bodies, offered to the sea god Claired. Her determination is absolute. She must find and confront those who killed her parents. Water swirls around her, emphasizing her deep connection to the ocean and her lineage. A ritual is shown, with figures holding fragments, seemingly of the sea god Claired, participating in a dark ceremony. Her mind flashes back to the damn hunters who caused her so much pain. Wanted posters fly in the air amidst the continuing fireworks, a stark contrast to her dark thoughts. The hunters are celebrating openly, clearly benefiting from their ill-gotten gains. Radon's face shows deep anguish as she recalls how her parents' bodies were torn apart. She remembers the horror of her parents' bodies being brutally massacred. Their bodies were cruelly divided into 7 pieces and taken by the hunters. Radon stands with her back to the viewer, the red lines on her clothes hinting at deep scars or her burning rage. Her grief and anger are immense, almost visible in the air around her. A powerful wave of water erupts around her. The water continues to surge dramatically. Her eyes blaze with fierce resolve, surrounded by dark and light energy, as she prepares to exact her revenge. The image focuses on the intense glowing blue eyes conveying her resolve and connection to the sea god power. The final panel shows the overwhelming, powerful surge of water. The night sky was filled with sparkling fireworks and a bright full moon. A figure stood atop a distant cliff, watching the spectacle while a grand ship sailed under the brilliant fireworks. Beneath the waves, a large ship sailed past. The scene shifts to the churning blue water below. Beneath the waves, the man's eyes glowed with a deep blue energy. He wondered how the great moon knew his personal story, saying, "But how did he know?" He thought to himself, "I never told him my story." It's as if the great moon arranged everything. He stood facing the ship, understanding this was his chance for revenge, a promise now to be kept. However, he knew he couldn't rush into revenge right away. He clenched his fist, realizing his enemies were superhumans using the sea god's power. He saw others around him celebrating, their hands glowing with the same power that sparked like fireworks. He looked at his own hand, seeing a similar light of power beginning to form. He considered if all these events were happening on purpose. He held up a pendant on a chain which shimmered with a soft glow, thinking, there must be a reason for the gift too. He imagined the great moon arranging everything, like a puppet master pulling strings, setting the scene for his revenge. The pendant around his neck pulsed with light, connecting him to the scene of the ship and fireworks below. He gazed at the luminous moon, clutching the pendant, his expression serious and thoughtful, enveloped in a blue starry energy. The great moon was laying out the entire stage and building the foundation for his revenge. He gazed intensely at the moonlit sea, clutching the pendant, his expression serious and thoughtful. Suddenly, water splashed, signaling a change in location and the start of a new journey. The scene changed to a beautiful island with swaying palm trees, where clear blue waves crashed onto the shore. A barefoot stepped onto the warm white sand, leaving a print as he looked towards a distant island peak. With a mighty jump, he launched himself high into the air. He then dove deep into the ocean, leaving a powerful trail behind him. Underwater, a bright light illuminated the depths. He was completely submerged, his eyes glowing intensely in the blue light of the sea, the pendant hanging from his neck. He wore Amrida's goggles, a special gift from the Great Moon, which let him see things others couldn't. The Great Moon's gift, Amrita's goggles, made it easy to discover relics in the deep sea, and the specific relics found that way were enough to fill his lacking combat power. He discovered a treasure chest filled with gold rings and colorful gems at the bottom of the sea. He held up the treasure chest filled with gold rings and gems. Back on the surface, the sound of waves splashing against the shore filled the air as the sun set. He walked along the beach, thinking, just grateful? How foolish of me. Standing under the big bright moon, he understood that the Great Moon kept the promise. The scene briefly showed the ship under fireworks again. He realized the Great Moon not only thrust the targets of revenge right before his eyes, but also granted him the power to take revenge. Everything. The man stood empowered, surrounded by flowing water, ready for what was to come. He smiled, finally making sense of all the past messages and commands he had received, feeling the water swirl around him. He realized, the orders given by letter, I now understand them all. Your true intention to carry out revenge and control the 7 archipelagos. He ran a hand through his hair, a confident smirk on his face, holding a treasure chest he had found. He walked away, carrying the chest, showing the setting change to a starry night. A voice in his mind asked, am I right? So don't forget. A vision of a woman under the moon spoke, suggesting everything was for the Great Moon. He questioned if these cold, emotionless words were truly meant for the Great Moon, realizing his past thoughts were wrong. Slowly, those words began to shine with the light of trust. As he realized, everything is, the man's eyes shone, showing a profound emotional understanding as he accepted, engraved deep in the heart. He accepted that everything he did was for the Great Moon, standing under the luminous moonlit sea. The scene changed to the man standing alone on the beach, holding his treasures, signaling that 3 months had passed. 3 months later, the tiresome heat recedes, and autumn arrives when the biennial Asura Grand Social Event is held, marked by trees with vibrant fall leaves. The main character sat inside a grand carriage, sighing that he hated this mandatory social event that happened every 4 years. More ornate carriages joined the procession, rolling along the road surrounded by the rich colors of fall. A carriage passed by from above, and a man reported that the carriages of the Creeld and Edorn families had joined their group. As planned. They increased their numbers to avoid trouble from bandits, which the main character found strange and bothersome. He found this custom strange and bothersome, looking out with a bored expression. Later that evening, he understood that his real problem wasn't bandits, but other nobles. He stood holding a wooden mug, looking sternly at someone. 2 nobles mocked him, saying Count Palacio had only 1 escort and must be low on funds, suggesting he got his position by coincidence. He realized that his real problem wasn't bandits, but these sneering nobles, as they laughed loudly. Annoyed, he told them to go gossip about him behind his back instead of to his face. He reflected on his past power, remembering that the long-standing scoundrel Palacio's power was based on wealth. He, as the original Palladio, controlled the eastern underworld, getting rich from illegal dealings. But satisfied with reality, he withdrew from the underworld. He thought to himself that even now there was no major issue making a living. The underworld was just too dangerous. Because he had left, the current eastern underworld was being targeted by riffraff. A delicious-looking steak, still dripping with juices, was served, a stark contrast to his thoughts of the underworld and approaching wolf-like figures. He knew the rumor that he became Count by chance had died down. His reputation had changed, and people no longer feared him as before. He knew he was now seen as a lucky fool, but the nobles were openly mocking him for his supposed lack of funds. 2 men, laughing, offered him help with his finances, clearly making fun of him. He was surprised by their direct mockery, as he hadn't expected them to be so bold. He scoffed, realizing these 2 were acting like a Palacio victim support group. Both nobles, Krild and Edorn, clinging to him, venting their past complaints against the Palacio family. The 2 men continued to mock him fiercely. He felt annoyed, knowing he hadn't even truly exploited them, and it felt like facing petty haters in person. Another man, Evan, came up to him, holding some roasted corn, asking where he had been. He told Evan to ignore them, as ignoring them was the answer in times like these. Evan explained he got roasted corn from the kitchen. Evan presented the roasted corn, saying it looked delicious. The main character agreed it looked tasty, thinking that simple relief food was always beloved, especially on chilly evenings. The 2 mockers then suggested all his underworld power disappeared because he couldn't manage them, asking where Evan went. They continued to insult him, saying he didn't even keep his carriage well, calling their jabs like music, while he just kept eating his corn. He found the roasted corn delicious and wished he had some butter for it, as the mockers continued their chatter in the background. The elegant house where the social event was held stood brightly lit against the night sky. A bright light appeared, marking another sudden shift in scenery. Snow began to fall gently under a dark, cloudy sky, revealing distant, icy mountains. The scene moved to the northern lands, endless frozen lands swallowed by barbarians. It was a cursed, gray-white place where there was no life. A large barbarian man, bleeding from his eye socket, groaned in pain and frustration. He cursed those dog-like Caliburn bastards who know no honor. This man was one of the 8 barbarian chieftains, revered by his people for his combat prowess. He was depicted in a brutal fight, an axe in his hand, as blood splattered around him. To barbarians who revere combat, death in battle is honorable and glorious. However, this was a defeat from a cowardly ambush, as he was surrounded by knights. He fell victim to a scheme by a Caliber knight who proposed a false duel. He collapsed onto the freezing ground, utterly defeated. He lay on the ice, barely conscious, as a bottle tipped over above him. A voice wondered what happened to Kurga of the snowfields, confirming the chieftain's identity as he fell victim to the duel scheme. Kurga lay still in the snow, realizing his defeat. Kurga felt a deep sense of disgrace over his current state. He lamented that he met such a shameful end, unable to even close his eyes in peace. A mournful wailing sound echoed across the icy landscape. A dark, powerful voice called out to his kin. Kurga's bloodied face showed his extreme suffering and pain. The voice commanded his people to call upon it. Kurga's still form lay on the snow, shadows of warriors surrounding him. The voice urged them to call upon its great name. It specifically asked them to call upon the name they had always revered. Kurga let out a pained and desperate cry towards the sky. He cried out, "Great God Altultus." Kurga's body twitched and shivered in the cold. He made a weak movement, trying to stir. With great effort, he struggled, trying to push himself up from the ground. He managed to call out, "Great God Altultus." He continued, declaring that he and his people dared to call upon the deity's honorable name. A magnificent figure with flowing blue hair and glowing eyes appeared, embodying the presence of Altultus. Altultus acknowledged their desperate plea. The deity's eyes glowed with an intense pink energy, confirming the call. The deity smiled menacingly, showing glowing teeth. Altultus promised that if they followed his command, he would grant what they desired. Carriages made their way through a colorful forest, heading towards a big social event. The journey was quite long, and the main character found the company around him very annoying. Even after other families joined the group, the rude comments and teasing didn't stop. People laughed and made fun of him, thinking he was easy to entertain with simple things. They thought he was pathetic, almost to the point of tears. But the young man just ignored them all, remembering the simple rule of not engaging with people who try to annoy you. While the others tried to provoke him, he found a moment of peace, like hitting a jackpot, as he managed to fish in a nearby stream. As night fell, the group decided to stop and rest. The young man thought it was time to settle down for the night. In the end, it was clear who won, the one who ignored the taunts, not the ones who desperately tried to get a reaction. The people who mocked him were upset. They couldn't believe he kept ignoring them and just moved on, feeling truly unbelievable. Meanwhile, two men were discussing the situation, specifically about any extra guards. One of them confirmed with a special item that the young man only had himself and one knight for protection. They believed the rumors that he was weak were true. So, they decided to move forward with their plan to execute their underworld expansion plan. They were tired of waiting for Palacio's permission and wanted to get all the power and money for themselves. After they took control of the backside, one of them suggested they should give that young man a gift. He thought the young man would be grateful if they showed him just how scary the world really is, finding amusement in his own twisted kindness. As they talked, a strange sound caught their attention, making them look around with confused expressions. The man with the mustache looked back at the other one with mild surprise. Suddenly, a terrible scream filled the air, signaling that something was very wrong. One of the men cried out in shock, realizing they were under attack by monsters. Dark creatures with glowing red eyes appeared from the forest, terrifying everyone with their sheer numbers. The attacking monsters moved swiftly and ferociously, making a chilling sound as they rushed forward. Amidst the chaos, a knight shouted for a mage to use their sight to assess the situation. The mage, with a determined look, raised his staff, preparing to cast a powerful spell. A bright light erupted from his staff, showing the magical energy he was gathering. The light exploded outwards, targeting the incoming swarm of creatures. The impact created a blast that revealed the monstrous forms of the goblins, which looked much stronger than usual. One of the knights looked confused, wondering if these fearsome creatures were truly just goblins. He expressed disbelief, stating that goblins were usually weak forest monsters. However, this time was different. The forest was filled with countless glowing red eyes, indicating a massive, overwhelming threat. These goblins were huge and muscular, much different from the weak ones they knew, and they were attacking fiercely. The sheer number of these strong goblins was completely overwhelming. This led to a grim scene of fallen soldiers and bloodshed. The remaining knights stood firm, but fear was visible in their eyes as they faced the endless horde. This entire chaotic event was just the beginning of Chapter 17. The scene focused on the foot of a giant creature stepping over a fallen guard. One of the nobles stared at the fallen guard, exclaiming that the situation was insane and asking what on earth had happened to the outside watch. Dee couldn't believe what he was seeing, having never encountered goblins like that before. These goblins were massive and terrifying, with an unnatural purple glow about them. He noticed their unusual build, wondering if they were a new, mutated type of monster. Adding to their strangeness, these goblins were also infused with mana, meaning they had magical power. The knight stated, which means one of the mutated goblins slammed its weapon into the ground, creating a powerful shockwave. This meant their basic physical ability was completely different from what they knew about goblins. The powerful goblins continued their relentless assault, swiping their weapons at the humans. The screen went dark, hinting at a moment of intense struggle and danger. One of the giant goblins charged forward, its powerful presence dominating the scene, while knights scattered behind it. Another immense goblin let out a roar, ready to strike with its enhanced strength. The ground trembled violently as the battle intensified, causing rocks and debris to fly everywhere. Knights struggled to hold their ground against the powerful blows, showing the overwhelming force of the goblins. The goblins attacked mercilessly, their glowing weapons striking down the knights. The noise of the battle was deafening, a mix of roars and desperate cries filling the air. Suddenly, a powerful surge of magic energy filled the sky, glowing brightly. This magical surge created a massive shield, protecting the remaining knights from the onslaught. The mage observed the situation, recognizing the use of powerful spells like a third circle rock wall and a second circle shield. He wondered who else could cast such strong magic. Then, another wave of magical energy, an enhancement spell, emanated from somewhere. The knights felt their strength surge, ready to fight with renewed power against the monsters. A compression spell followed, causing the ground to shake as energy gathered. The magic crushed the surrounding area, impacting several goblins and leaving them stunned. The powerful magic continued to reshape the battlefield, causing even more destruction. A bright ball of energy pulsed intensely in the air. The magical force slammed into the ground, cracking it and scattering the goblins. The main character calmly walked through the chaos, observing the lingering magical sphere. He stood in the middle of the destruction he had caused, surrounded by the remnants of the battle. With another powerful move, he activated a new spell from his special bracelet. He unleashed a vacuum spell, pulling debris and energy towards a central point. The vacuum spell intensified, creating a swirling vortex of energy. Then he cast a spell called Return to the Primitive, extending his hand with a powerful glow. His hand glowed with immense magic, ready to unleash its full effect. The light from his bracelet intensified, marking the activation of the spell. A powerful blast of energy shot out, aiming at the mutated goblins. The spell struck the goblins, tearing through them and leaving a trail of destruction and blood. The remaining goblins were quickly dealt with as the spell swept through their ranks. The main character stood tall amidst the fading magical energy, having single-handedly turned the tide of the battle. The two conniving nobles watched in horror as their men were overwhelmed, their expressions filled with fear. The main character then commanded everyone not to be stunned but to get ready, signaling that the fight was still ongoing, or that they needed to secure the area. He quickly aimed another powerful attack at the remaining foes. His magic tore through the goblins, sending them flying into the air. Meanwhile, the knights also engaged in close combat, their swords clashing against the goblins' weapons. The battlefield was a scene of fierce combat, with both magic and swords clashing against the goblin horde. The main character continued to unleash his powerful magic, directing it towards the enemies. His spells created powerful impacts, pushing back and damaging the strong goblins. With a swift motion, he delivered a final blow, cutting through the remaining monster. He moved with deadly precision, taking down the last of the powerful goblins. The knight stared in awe, watching the incredible display of power from the main character. The last goblin fell, struck down by a powerful blow. As the sun rose, the sky cleared, and the intense battle finally came to an end. The ground was littered with the defeated bodies of the mutated goblins, showing the scale of the victory. One of the knights exclaimed that the battle was finally over. The nobles watched, utterly shocked and terrified by what they had just witnessed. The knights wondered who that person, the main character, really was, having seen his extraordinary power. The main character stood silently, reflecting on the intense battle he had just fought. He looked up at the sky, still processing the near-death experience. He noticed the glowing green crystal near his feet, realizing it was the root of the biggest problem. He let out a sigh of relief, feeling the lingering effects of the intense magic. He almost died just now. He realized he had almost died, despite their victory, feeling a shiver down his spine. He noted that his daily spell count was still very low, only 3 or 4, and that his mana had been completely empty by the middle of the fight. Evan, his companion, asked if he was hurt, but he simply replied that he was fine. Even with Evan here, he admitted to himself that losing the ability to protect myself was terrifying. Evan checked on him again, but he insisted he was truly fine. Secretly thinking it was good he traveled with the nobles because they were noisy, but it was a good thing he traveled with the nobles instead of alone. He then turned his attention to a glowing amethyst, realizing it was the root of the biggest problem. He questioned why a descent had happened, calling it a strange phenomenon. A divine descent occurs when an outer lord tries to descend. This phenomenon makes monsters much more vicious and physically stronger. He looked at the mutated goblins, realizing this phenomenon had indeed made them incredibly powerful. He wondered if such a thing was even possible, questioning why it should be happening now. Outer lords from the fringes, who should only appear after the 5 great sins descend and the laws of the world collapse, are being foreshadowed as about to come down to this land. The vision showed a dark figure with a single eye over a crowd of people, with purple energy surrounding structures. He looked at the images in his mind, showing a world in chaos with these powerful beings in purple crystals. Yet, these powerful entities were already showing signs of coming to this land. The vision of a collapsing world and descending power filled his thoughts. He was troubled, as the kids hadn't awakened as the 5 great sins, so he couldn't understand why this was happening. He pondered what exactly had gone wrong to cause such an early descent of powerful entities. After this intense experience, the next day had arrived. He let out a breath, looking at the bright sky and autumn leaves. He knew that once they arrived at their destination, he needed to start gathering information immediately. He looked down, feeling the heavy burden of his current situation. He understood that if this keeps up, my head will roll in the near future. The two nobles who had mocked him earlier now looked utterly horrified and silent after witnessing his power. The next day, they finally reached the Grand Rotegra ducal family estate. The impressive estate stood majestically, ready to host the social gathering. The carriage door opened and the main character looked tired and worn out. They had finally arrived, ending a journey filled with suffering upon suffering. The estate was bustling with people, with the social event about to begin. The curtain of the grand social has risen, with many people already present. The main character, completely exhausted from the journey and the unexpected battle, just wanted to go home and sleep. Guests gathered in a grand hall, sparkling with gold chandeliers and elegant decorations. The venue was truly lavish, designed for an important social event where everything here is made of gold. The nobles here mainly wanted to show off their wealth. They probably wouldn't even notice if someone took one, but somehow this feels tacky. Someone admired Duke Rotegra, saying he was truly competent. Other nobles chatted, with one person jokingly saying their baby bird wouldn't allow something, while another advised caring for one's health. Palatio felt he shouldn't interact with other nobles, as he personally didn't like it and preferred to keep his distance. He thought, Suddenly, Palatio noticed something unusual happening. Two men approached him with overly cheerful voices. They bowed deeply and called him Count Palladio, asking if he could spare a moment. They offered him a moment of his time and presented him with the highest quality meat from their territory, inviting him to try some. Another man brought a chest full of gold coins, offering support for Palladio's territory. The first man then asked, "How about it?" Palatio was utterly confused, wondering why these people were suddenly acting so friendly and offering him gifts. The two men who first approached him looked terrified, realizing Palladio's expression was grim. They panicked, thinking, "This is bad. We shouldn't have messed with him." This whole change started one day ago, right after a battle with goblins. On that day, Palatio and another man stood calmly after the battle. Meanwhile, other nobles who had witnessed something amazing were speechless and fearful. They looked shocked, silently wondering if others had seen what happened. The man with the mustache said, magic. Others rushed over, asking Baron Almond to lend them his mage, explaining they needed to ask something urgently. The third circle mage, hired by Baron Almond to show off his wealth, stared in disbelief. The mage was thinking, "Hey, that magic just now." He thought that should be some kind of second circle magic, right? The mage gasped, realizing that if it was only second circle magic, he couldn't believe it. He then thought that Palladio's magic must be third circle or higher, making him realize Palladio was not just a lucky count. They whispered that Count Palacio was hiding immense power, so much that he didn't even need guards. They looked utterly defeated and scared. His presence alone seemed powerful. Pallatio's eyes glowed with a cold, intense gaze. The nobles then realized the cold and cruel nature of a Palladio. They decided they had no choice but to bribe him to save themselves, concluding, "We have to beg for mercy." Back in the present, the nobles bowed deeply before Palatio, blaming their bad delusions for their past arrogance. They pleaded, "Please, we beg for your mercy." Their faces were wet with tears. Palatio, confused by their misunderstanding, wondered if he should just kick them out. Another person remarked, "Huh? They're at it again?" He usually was forgiving, but this time they had truly crossed a line. The nobles pleaded, "Please, we beg for your mercy." Palladio decided to handle it himself, thinking, "I don't even know what they're misunderstanding. Should I kick them out?" Another noble suggested, "Let me handle this myself." Palatio replied, "Besides, it's not like I have the power to do anything. Whatever, let them be afraid." He switched to cold mode. The two nobles knelt on the floor, trembling with fear. They looked utterly defeated and scared, lamenting, "Whoa, we're done for. Our end has come." The chapter title announced Raising the Villains 18, showing a table laden with delicious snacks. Palatio reflected that he had sent Evan to the Information Guild, and now it was his turn to dig up information from the nobles at the party. He calmly held a drink while observing the room. He noticed two men having a secret conversation in the distance. Palladio thought, "Oh?" Palatio decided to use mana to enhance his hearing to listen in on their talk. He leaned in, listening as one baron asked the other if he had heard the latest news. The news was about Duke Altea and Count Zenonia, who were apparently trying to form a new faction, a rumor the second baron initially didn't believe. Palatio, eating an egg tart, thought, at first I didn't believe they'd formed an alliance. Oh, not important after all. Nothing to worry about. He knew these two major players in the noble families don't have a close relationship. He concluded their alliance probably won't last long anyway. Palladio happily munched on his delicious egg tart, thinking, "Ooh, delicious. The egg tarts here are so good, Tilda." Suddenly, he overheard something even more shocking. "Don't tell anyone this." The other noble asked, "Then who?" Palatio was intrigued and wondered who it could be. And to his shock, he heard the name Palatio, while he happily ate the tart. The gossip revealed that Palatio was the real head of the new faction. He looked shocked, with electricity sparking around him. The name Count Palatio was spoken with a hint of awe. Palatio was speechless, dropping the food he was eating. He couldn't believe such ridiculous nonsense was being spread about him. He looked small as others towered over him. He thought, what kind of nonsense is that? He recalled meeting Duke Altea once when he was young. He also remembered meeting the daughter of the Zenonia family twice. He noted that the current Count Zenonia has never met him. He thought, if that's what you feel comfortable talking with, then I don't mind. He sighed, getting a migraine. Ha, I should have expected this. Besides, that's just baseless gossip and rumors. He wondered why so many people were talking to him today. A man introduced himself as Carmine, the third son of Duke Camelon, and greeted him. Carmine was a handsome, elegant man, winking charmingly. Palladio realized that nobles from other countries also attended this gathering, and politely introduced himself as Count Palladio. Carmine's expression turned sinister as he revealed, I heard you only became a count because of luck. Carmine continued, I'm so jealous I had to see what your face looks like. What's the secret? Palladio internally compared him to a talking donut. An Asterian noble stepped forward, demanding to know, what did you say? The noble accused Carmine of intending to insult a noble from their Asteria kingdom. Carmine, startled, tried to deny it, saying that wasn't what he meant. He was shocked, having thought that trying to bully Palladio wouldn't be a problem. Before this, Carmine, a handsome and romantic man from a distant country, had come to marry Duke Rotegre's youngest daughter. He charmingly offered his fiancée a tart he brought. He believed he was so perfect that no woman would refuse him. However, he then rudely commented that his fiancée needed to lose weight. He also criticized another woman's nose, then turned to his fiancée complimenting her mother's looks, trying to flatter her. But his next words were harsh. We should reconsider our marriage, which shocked his fiancée. Lady Rotegra was deeply upset by this sudden breakup. Carmine was annoyed that his marriage was suddenly called off. He had traveled all this way only to be disappointed. He stomped away in frustration, looking for someone to vent his anger on. He then spotted Count Palladio and remembered rumors of him being an immature noble with no connections. Carmine decided Palladio was the perfect target for him to vent his frustrations. He confronted Palladio, asking, have you lost your respect? The kingdom of Ashutalon has been our ally since long ago. Palladio was defended by an Asterian noble, who told Carmine that wasn't what he meant. Palladio watched the situation unfold, finding it increasingly interesting. He thought, what interesting situation is this now? He knew that despite his own indifference to politics, Duke Comelon, as a pillar of the kingdom of Ashutalon, must not take the kingdom of Asteria lightly. Duke Rotegre, a key figure in the aristocrat faction, and Marquis Mardanio, a key figure in the royalist faction, both looked displeased, saying they didn't understand Carmine's rudeness. The leader of the moderate faction also stood by Palladio, stating that these three were central figures in the Asteria kingdom, implying that Duke Camelon must have looked down on them. Carmine quickly denied it wasn't true, but the moderate faction leader pressed him, asking for a reason why he disrespected their noble. Carmine then admitted, I've done wrong. The other nobles stressed that the important point was Carmine had belittled Palladio, making Carmine stammer, that. Palladio was amazed at how hated he must be for these three important figures who barely knew him to protect him like this. He realized why the scene felt so familiar. He remembered a similar situation from his military service, where soldiers were asked if they knew any words other than, I'm sorry. Carmine, under pressure, could only say, I. Then, I truly apologize for my rudeness, which reminded Palladio of his painful military memories. Finally, Carmine truly apologized for his rudeness, bowing deeply. The key figures quickly checked on Palladio, asking, Count Palladio, are you all right? Palladio, overwhelmed, wondered what was happening to people today, finding it all a bit scary. He thought, wow, how hated is he that these three who barely know me would protect me like this. By the way, no wonder I felt this scene was so familiar. He realized that since such key figures were approaching him, the rumor about him leading a faction must be believed. He also thought that if Duke Altea and Count Zanoni could join politics, his own power as their supposed leader would become very strong. He saw electricity sparking around his head, symbolizing the rising power being attributed to him. He worried, is it because if that rumor continues, the situation could get troublesome? Maybe I should tell them it's just a baseless rumor. Duke Rotigra approached him, saying they had never had a proper conversation. Count Palladio replied, he understood, as Rotegre must be very busy. Rotegre then mentioned hearing about Palladio researching magic lately. He then offered Palladio a valuable artifact that could store mana, asking, what do you think? The leader of the moderate faction also stepped forward, saying, I've also prepared a gift. Count, would you accept my gift as well? Palladio, seeing the valuable gifts, thought, maybe I should tell them it's just a baseless rumor. He stayed silent because he couldn't resist the temptation. He accepted the gifts, obtaining 2 magic artifacts and 5 mana potions. Early the next morning, at Duke Rotegre's annex, discussions took place. The beautiful annex stood under the morning light. Duke Rotegre sat with Duchess Altea, asking, how did it go? Duchess Altea confirmed that he had fortunately accepted the gift. She explained that while small gifts among nobles are just greetings, important items like artifacts have a bigger meaning. For those who want to join a faction, giving a gift to that faction's head means a positive response signifying their intention to align. It meant that Palladio had accepted them. Duke Rotegre laughed, saying, haha, all this is thanks to you, Duchess Altea. He was pleased, stating that now they can officially share the same goal. Duchess Altea smiled, looking elegant in her dark gown and wide-brimmed hat. Her plan had worked perfectly. The image shows the Duchess's elegant dress flowing downward. A note revealed that Duke Rotegre's palace has many mansions, and goodness how sinful it is for him to be rich. He deserves punishment. And they contain the Duke's concubines. A mysterious woman in a wide-brimmed hat announces that she and her companion now officially share the same goal. She then looks down and asks about the other people involved in their plans. A man across from her replies that it is an honor for him and confirms that everyone else is ready to be accepted. The man thinks about Duke Altea, who rarely takes action but suddenly appeared and personally approached those he chose. He believes that after selecting the necessary pawns, Altea put his grand plan into motion. The woman agrees, observing that those chosen had to go through a special ritual with sincere offerings. She considers that even though rumors are spreading fast, these events are clearly part of a larger political movement. The man decides that he must seize this important opportunity to advance his own agenda. He looks determined, a bead of sweat showing his deep concentration and the weight of his thoughts. A bright light shines down, hinting at new beginnings or revelations. The woman relaxes into her seat, a soft smile on her face signaling that everything is finally in place. Her eyes sparkle as she declares that they can now begin to move forward with their plans for real. This marks the beginning of their journey, as the story continues in the 19th chapter. The chapter opens with a beautiful view of a grand castle, basking in the warm glow of the setting sun. On the 4th day of the banquet, the castle hall is bustling with many guests enjoying the festivities. The main character, walking among the guests, notices that the number of gifts he has received keeps growing unexpectedly. He speculates that people are being kind due to a false rumor about his good standing with Altea and Zenonia, and he happily decides to accept all the presents. Suddenly, someone behind him calls out "Count," making him jump. The main character lets out a small shriek and drops his gift, startled, while his assistant asks what is wrong. The main character explains that he was just lost in thought, looking a little embarrassed by his reaction. The scene then shifts to a quiet, elegant room with large windows. The main character, now looking serious, wonders if an outer god has already descended in the northern region. His assistant confirms that the situation in the north has indeed shocked Caliburn. The assistant adds that old texts suggest a connection between Amethyst and the outer god. What about the extra information I asked for? He asks for more information about a person he was looking for in a village located in northern Ashutalon. Good, we can drop by there on the way. He decides it would be good to visit that village on their way to Caliburn. He looks thoughtful, touching his chin as he considers the implications of his decision. His assistant looks up, surprised by the sudden change in their travel plans. The assistant asks if the main character is now planning to go to the northern region. The main character simply tells his assistant to get ready to leave soon, promising to explain the details later on the road. The assistant acknowledges the order, but a sense of unease lingers. The main character clutches his head, looking very distressed. He laments that he truly hoped this situation would not come to pass. Disaster bringing beings like the 5 great sins and outer gods. Ominous, glowing figures suggest the presence of these powerful entities. We have no way of knowing which outer god will descend or perform a divine descent. He reflects on how he tried his best to gather information and move as fast as possible. But fate moved faster. He sighs, realizing that the descent of the outer god happened much sooner than he expected. He remembers playing this world as a game, seeing hundreds of possible outcomes, and how the ending was already clear in his mind. He sits alone, feeling the weight of the coming destruction. He envisions the allied kingdoms being shattered and destroyed, and fall into chaos after waging stupid wars on lands contaminated by power from another world. He realizes that if that happens, my life will be ruined in an instant. He knows he already has plans to deal with things like this, but he looks determined, ready to confront the dire situation head-on. I do already have plans to deal with things like this, but it goes through a stabilization period for a few months before fully awakening as a living god. During that period, the outer god can't use its full power yet. I can't guarantee anything, but I still have to try. He sits at his desk, diligently writing down his strategies with a quill. He seals a document with a magical purple wax, convinced this is the only path forward. He finds himself curious about what that kid is like now. 1 week later, a significant amount of time has passed since these discussions. He sits in a grand room, looking thoughtfully at a small piece of paper he holds. A soldier calls out commander as he approaches another man. The commander, dressed sharply, stands outside a building with the soldier. The commander looks surprised by something the soldier has just said. The soldier then respectfully addresses him as vice commander, confirming his rank. The vice commander instructs the soldier to postpone their next scheduled mission for 2 weeks. The vice commander stands tall and resolute, his gaze firm. They arrive at Pakran, a village nestled in the northern part of the Ashutalon kingdom. I never thought I'd find him this easily. The main character expresses his surprise at how easily he managed to locate the person he was seeking. He looks down, a small bead of sweat on his forehead. A bright boy with blue hair glowing softly, enthusiastically says hello to them, and the main character instantly notices how much he stands out. This boy is revealed to be Elaban, the protagonist and playable character from the roguelike turn-based RPG Psychedelia. Elaban is a young boy dressed in a vest and shorts, radiating a cheerful energy. I guess if he's the protagonist, of course he'd stand out. The main character thinks that it makes sense for the protagonist to stand out so much. He looks exactly like in the illustrations. He even wonders if Elaban is truly a boy, finding him a bit too pretty. Elaban asks if they know who he is, then happily announces his name, Elaban. The main character silently acknowledges that no matter how different this world is from the game version, a protagonist remains a protagonist. He knows that Elaban is destined to become famous and strong later on. Elaban stands in a glowing spotlight, embodying the pure, heroic image of a protagonist, Facing a character I'm used to playing like this feels so weird. The main character comments on Elaban's bright personality, finding it strange to meet a character he used to play in person. He then extends his hand, offering something to Elaban. He gives Elaban a small pouch, making Elaban look confused and question what it is. Elaban looks inside and realizes it contains a gold coin. The main character then calls for his assistant Evan. Evan quickly pulls out a small ornate box filled with various potions and valuable items. Evan begins to toss the items from the box towards Elaban, who is completely bewildered by the sudden shower of gifts. More brightly wrapped packages are thrown by Evan, scattering around Elaban. The main character declares that all these numerous gifts are for Elaban, who is now surrounded by the sparkling pile. It's all yours. Elaban looks utterly shocked and overwhelmed by the sheer volume of presents he has received. He asks the main character why he is suddenly being given so many things. The main character explains that it's an investment. I'm bringing you everything good for a protagonist's early growth, because you're going to be an important person someday. He leans closer to Elaban, looking him in the eye as he speaks earnestly. He urges Elaban to grow strong quickly so he can eventually fight outer godlike beings for him. As the main character and Evan walk away, the main character muses if this generous treatment will be enough to win Elaban over. He confidently thinks he has completely captured Elaban's heart with his kindness. I've totally won his heart, right? He realizes he almost forgot to introduce himself and announces that he is Count Palladio. I almost forgot to introduce myself. I'm Count Palladio. He tells Elaban that he is his patron and expects Elaban to thank him once he achieves success. Oh, thank you. I mean Count. As the main character boards his carriage, Elaban promises to definitely remember his kindness. Elaban waves vigorously, still full of energy and gratitude. The main character glances back one last time before entering his carriage, which then begins to move. He then wonders if Elaban's personality was always this cheerful. He finds Elaban's positivity surprising for a character in a dark fantasy story. Evan then respectfully calls for the Count. Evan asks if it's truly all right to leave without having a proper talk first, but the Count assures him Elaban is a quick-witted kid who will understand. The Count explains that his life is currently in danger, so he cannot spend time building a slow affinity with a character. Just in case you didn't know, I've already set the protagonist to auto-hunt mode. Elaban truly seems to possess exceptional talent. Evan confirms this, noting that Elaban's mana is remarkably dense and swirling around him. Elaban stands glowing with potent magical energy, even in his simple attire. The Count feels as if Elaban is wearing artifacts despite his normal clothes, sensing his strong mana. He recalls that in the game, Elaban's initial state was just an ordinary person before he embarked on his adventures. The Count realizes this extraordinary talent must be another unexpected butterfly effect. That's different from the game. This change is especially significant because he's the protagonist. The Count decides to stick to his lazy life plan, believing that the stronger he gets, the better. He concludes that investing in Elaban will be extremely worthwhile, as Elaban is one of the very few good-hearted people in this dark fantasy world. Therefore, he feels there's nothing to worry about. Suddenly, the Count pauses, a surprised expression crossing his face as he reconsiders his thought about Elaban being good-hearted. Wait, good-hearted? Evan then changes the subject, asking the Count about Deus. The Count looks worried, wondering if Deus would even want to see him. Evan gently reminds the Count that he never visited his own orphanage, out of fear, but assures him that the children he supported would surely want to see you face to face. The Count softly replies, maybe Tilda, as his carriage rolls down a path lined with vibrant, colorful trees. The narrative then highlights the sorrow of a young transmigrator, setting a melancholic tone. Evan asks why the Count is buying so many random items, and the Count explains that they are all bribes for his future savior,